Hello, welcome back to the Live Reality Game Podcast. My name is Steven. I'm here with more Surviving Reelfoot, the Decennium deep dive postseason coverage. And joining us today, we have the fourth juror of the season, Melissa. Melissa, how are you doing?
Oh, I hate hearing that I was the fourth juror. But I'm doing great. Happy to.
So I'll apologize. It's hard to put what placement people are in with how redemption works and makes things really strange with putting numbers. So I was like, hey, I'm just gonna go with juror numbers. So that's not gonna change.
Yes, because it was hard, because we had voted out all the way to 10 people and then game 2 and then got voted. And then I got all the way back down to 9 again. So it felt a lot longer than it actually was. So,
I mean, because you double checking, you made it all the way to, you were the last vote of day 6, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it made for 6 very long days, especially with that day and a 2-day merge period being wild, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
So this was your second, we were talking a little before, and this is the second game you played. Your first game was Survival Challenge 2023. You made it all the way to 5th place when, unfortunately, an idol knocked you out, I believe from Devonte, I want to say.
Yes, but I love Devonte, so it's okay.
We can forgive him for this, I agree. And so talk to me about your road to Reelfoot. How, did you know about Reelfoot prior to the Survival Challenge? Did you play Survival Challenge and learn there's other these out there?
Yeah, it's kind of a blur, but when I was starting to apply for Survivor, I had heard about Survival Challenge, but I was really newly postpartum. So I was I just didn't feel like it was the right time for all of that. So fast forward a couple years and I felt like, okay, I'm ready to apply. So I applied, I got cast, and I went all in for preparation. I cut caffeine. I learned how to swim. I did everything except learn how to kayak. And people who are listening that understand, I did not learn how to
kayak. High up in the Survivor to-do list, I'm not going to lie.
And so I did a lot of preparation for Survival Challenge. I went into it super nervous, not knowing where I was going to place, what I was going to do, if people were even going to like me, how I would do in the challenges, how I would do just playing Survivor. I had no idea. Played Survival Challenge, had a great time, enjoyed my time with meeting new people and just the experience overall. Take away a placement, I was so proud of myself. I had never camped a day in my life. And the very first time I ever camped was the first night of Survival Challenge. So it was just, when I was younger, my parents signed me up for a sleepaway camp that was pretty much in a cabin, whatever. I was there for 30 minutes, called my mom, you're coming to get me. Right now it smells weird. I don't want to be here. So I'm a girly girl to an extent. And, so that was really outside my comfort zone. But after I did it, I was hungry for more. I don't really remember how I stumbled across Reelfoot. I know that I was playing in org a couple years ago, and one of the production members left to go play Reelfoot. So that's kind of how I heard about it. But I didn't really do any digging. What happened was when I got back from Survival Challenge, I saw a post that they needed females and POC. So I went ahead and just applied.
And so you get cast for Reelfoot. What was the preparation like this time? Was it as rigorous as Survival Challenge? You're just I can maybe take a little breather.
This was a totally different experience for me. So I like to be prepared, at least be in shape, something. The months leading up to Reelfoot, you can even ask my little confessional chat of the core 4 production members, or whatever they called themselves. I don't want to disregard anyone else that was on production, but I was telling them almost pretty often, I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to play this. I had so many personal life events that had happened leading up to that left me in a place where I just was really unsure what the next couple months were even going to look like for my family. And then I got put in a cast. So I tore my calf muscle and was put in a cast for 5 weeks. And I got my cast off 2 weeks before I went and played Reelfoot. So I literally did not know if I was really going to be able to play. And I didn't want to tell like Pete, Amos, Trevor, and Parker like exactly how serious I might not be able to play. But like, I mean, it was really down to the wire. Like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to play. And then when my doctor gave me the like green light to go ahead and try it, that's when I like cut caffeine and like tried to like buy my bug spray, like try to get like to know the preparation for this was totally different. I knew nothing about Reelfoot, at least with Survival Challenge. I listened to their podcast. I didn't even know Reelfoot had podcasts. So like I really didn't know anything about this going into it.
I want to talk about, like I'm a believer that, these games, they get a little easier the second time, right? I feel like first time you're so in the moment, like, wow, this is it. I'm playing a Survivor. And that definitely, it's a little different on your second time through. Did you feel that way at all in your experience in Reelfoot?
No.
Okay, that's fair.
No, I don't think it was easier. I don't even think the nerves were any less, because it's like when you walk into this group of people, you have to adapt. Every group is very different. You don't know any of these people, their connections with each other. So for me, it felt kind of the same. I think the only like easy part is like, I know that I can sleep in the woods with nothing for a couple of days. Like that I knew I could do. I knew I could like push myself through that. So I guess like all those fears that you would have doing it for the first time, I didn't really have those. But as far as like the game itself goes, I mean, you never know. You just never know. So I still had all those nerves like I would have in any other game.
Walking in, what was your strategy? Or was it the same or different from what you did in Survival Challenge?
I had a very loose strategy walking into Reelfoot. I did know I had some goals that I wanted to accomplish in this game. In my previous game, I had to play like super under the radar and like really under the radar. So it kind of left me with like, am I capable of playing like a really strong Survivor game? So going into this one, of course, everyone's goal is to win, right? And my goal was no different than anyone else's. And I'm extremely competitive, as you could probably tell in some of those clips. But my goal going in this one is like, I don't really want to play under the radar. And I want to find a group of people that want to play a really strong, not necessarily loud. Loud wasn't what I wanted going in, but we were a little loud. But, I wanted to play a strong game. And like, I just wanted to, like, I basically did this for myself. Like these last couple years I've had are super transformative for me. And this game was for me. This game was for me to show me if I could do it, if I could really put myself out there and be a strong player that isn't necessarily under the radar the whole time. So that was really what I wanted to do going into it.
And so were there any key things you want to do differently? Oh, let me just put this in your intro video. You're like, I will be throwing votes. I am planning on throwing my vote because never again am I going home with an idle play like that. Talk me through that mentality, and were you successful in that? Yeah.
So like, okay, it was a fun video, right? But I didn't want to I wasn't going to go into Reelfoot just throwing rogue votes every time I walked.
Which I was really excited for. Like, boy, she's claiming she's never going to vote the majority.
But no, I mean, they were very well thought through. And to be very honest, until I got post-merge, I really kind of knew where everything was going. So I didn't really need to do not that I shouldn't say that. I didn't know where everything was going, but I didn't feel I knew where everybody's advantages were. Let's put it that way. So I didn't feel it was necessary to throw a bunch of rogue votes in the beginning. Plus, I wanted to build trust with people. What really the vote that was rogue, so to speak, that I was praying and hoping would work was the merge vote when I voted for Sandra. That was the vote that I wanted, that nobody else wanted to do. And I was like hoping and praying. Shauna had an idol. I knew Tony was going to play his, and I was hoping like my one little vote to Sandra would just like send her out. But that was my one rogue vote that I felt was necessary and needed to happen. And I made it I made the decision of that and didn't tell anyone I was doing that.
Well, because you look at your voting history, right? So you vote for Danny in the minority, right? So not a rogue vote, but you're voting minority, preventing like a weird idle play from happening. Danny, it's a unanimous vote. And then you're in several really close votes, right? The Melanie versus German, neck and neck. Melissa, you versus Jeff, neck and neck. And then you have the Maddie versus Carl again. Like you did have some room to throw it, but like you didn't need to per se. And it was a pretty neck and neck. The merge vote, like you said, you throw votes. There's a world where maybe it works. Or maybe Shauna plays her advantage ahead of time. She isn't there. I don't know. And then from there, you're kind of stuck in a minority. You're like, well, shoot, now I don't have this wiggle room anymore.
Yeah, from there, it was like I just voted for German just to stay consistent. Like it was at that point, my votes like really didn't matter. Mm-hmm. So I like my whole like rogue vote queen didn't work for me so much. So I feel like the only one that would have been successful would maybe have been that first merge like vote.
Austin Jackson, who is one of the handlers and volunteers and is one of the reigning winners of Reelfoot, says, Melissa venting to me post-travel was one of my favorite things this season.
I love Austin. He was the best. At one point I was like, can you just walk with me for a second? I need someone to like literally tell me if I'm being out of line or if I'm like losing it. Like I just needed someone out of the game to like just be like, no, you're all right. Because it got to a point where I was like, what dimension am I in right now?
So you arrive at Survival Challenge. Your game to see the cast as they kind of filter in for that pre-game segment. Is there anyone you noticed, or is there anyone that stands out to you in this pre-game?
Oh, for Reelfoot, you mean? You said
for Reelfoot, yes.
Just want to make
sure. Yeah, practically one the same. No.
Yeah, so I was like, I wasn't the first real group to be there. I was kind of like maybe a little bit towards the end of the people showing up, and I walk up and I right away. So like, I really don't feel like I'm very connected in this world. And I right away from like Survival Challenge, see 3 people on the porch. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But I was really excited to see Mel. I gave her like a little smile and then I was like, oh, Melissa, you stop. Like, as everybody was looking at me walking up because I was the only one walking up at that point. But I noticed Mel right away. I was super stoked. I saw Jordan was really stoked. And then I saw Shauna, which I was also like excited, but it was like, we're from the same season. I just am like afraid of connections. I really hate them. And I kind of wish that we could play games without them. And like, here I am now, there's literally someone from my season here, the only other game that I played. So I noticed them right away. And then I noticed Debbie. So I know Debbie from our online game. The online game that I'm on production for, which is Survivor Vanquish. She played, don't mark my words, like 1 or 2 of those seasons. So I got to know her pretty good there. And I met her in person one other time. So I recognized Debbie up on the porch, but that's all those are the only people I knew. Like, and Jordan and Mel, I like knew, Yeah. So it wasn't even like I really knew them very well. So
did anyone else stand out to you?
Blake, I made like a beeline to Blake. As soon as I got up on that porch, I was like, hi, why are you so cute? And like, I started talking to him like right away. I'm pretty sure he was like the first one that I like went straight for. Otherwise, I think I was just kind of like mingling. Like I was near Jeff a lot on the porch. Like I said, I like followed Blake around pretty much the whole time we were on that porch. It was just I like just immediately I just like knew I just wanted to work with him. I wanted him to love me as much as I loved him. It was instant love. But otherwise, I was really just kind of keeping an eye on the females because I really wanted to, work with the girls. The guys, I kind of just figured we'll figure it out when we get out there. But the girls, I wanted to like make sure that they knew I was like here for them. And Hannah stood out to me like right away. Like she had on a red shirt, which I feel like people just like are kind of drawn to red. It's supposed to be like, when you go to sale signs, sales have red. So I was drawn to Hannah at first. She had really cool hair. I'm a hairstylist. So that was like, something I noticed right away. Trinica just looked like my kind of person. Like she just looked like we were going to get along really well, but I wasn't trying to be too forceful with her because she was a little timid on that porch. But the girls, like, I mean, it was me. I want to say it was like me, Kiri, Joe, Trinica, and maybe it was Hannah. We were all just kind of sitting on the porch, and I was like, this looks like a good little group right here. And I think I might have said that while we were sitting there. But aside from that, I wasn't really sizing people up just yet.
And so the game begins, and you're put on that green tribe, the Kina tribe. So it's you along with Charlie, Ethan, Hannah, German, Tony, Trinica, Melanie, Danny, and Joe. A couple of people who you've talked about. What was your impression of this group of people?
So when you looked at us next to the pink tribe, I will be very honest that I was a little concerned. Like the pink tribe to me looked more stacked than us. Like I know that's like totally being judgmental and like just going off of looks, because I know Mel like tells us all the time, you just don't know what tribe strength is until you see the actual people's strengths, right? So on the initial, I was kind of like, I wasn't super worried, but I was like, I don't know about this. But then after I know I'm jumping ahead, but like after our first challenge, I just saw how cohesive we all were. And we were so much more gelled and connected than the pink tribe. So I felt significantly better after that, like really, really proud of us and really, really, I don't even know what's like. I was confident in us. So that was great. As far as like challenges go, as far as like dynamics, I was excited to meet people. I like love playing these games mainly to like meet people that you wouldn't normally cross paths with and like really get to know them. So I was excited to get to know the people on my tribe. And I was also excited to not really be with anybody I knew on my tribe.
What do you think made your tribe so much more cohesive?
Our communication was like chef's kiss. Like I feel like and during like really stressful moments, we all like came to play. Like, and I just think that really showed in our challenges. Like, especially you could see we won the first few because our communication was so good. We actually, and I think pretty truthfully talked about our strengths going into these challenges, and we just like divvied it all up pretty evenly. And it just seemed to work for us. I can't tell you we had this like secret sauce, but we were really like communicating very well.
So do you think tribe strength is best defined by kayaking ability?
I don't know what tribe strength is. I mean, that's like a blurry area.
I feel like tribe strength is a way to mask your true intentions. Like I think whenever it says like we're trying to keep the tribe strong, it's because like they're saying I want to vote this person out. I don't want to give the real reasons. I'm just going to push this weakness story and hope it sticks. And maybe sometimes it does.
I haven't voted that way yet, and I don't know. It just really is dependent. I think for me, it's more numbers than just winning all the time. And if you've got people that are strong on your tribe, but you're not really working very well with them, or they're not even communicating with you, it's hard to keep those kind of people around.
We'll talk about the Jeff vote later then. I want to give you a magic wand. And you can change any person from you can put any person from your original green tribe to the pink tribe and vice versa. So who would you swap?
Well, I liked meeting up with Carl when I did, so I probably would keep him there. I think I would take Blake over to us on green. And separate him from James just for a second so that they don't get viewed as a duo, right? Yeah, I didn't know this, but I like knowing what I know now. I think I would pull Blake over to us and I would put Charlie maybe over on pink.
Okay. Any reason for Charlie?
Charlie was doing great. And I really Charlie was high on my list, and I feel like at that point we would be able to come back together or come together at some point and be able to work better together. I think the beginning stages were kind of rough. And I think that if Charlie and I could have like reconnected a little later in the game, it might have been a little bit better.
I'm curious. So what is your viewpoint on idols and advantages? Are those things you're actively looking for yourself? Do you just want to know where they are? Do you just not care about them?
That was a box I needed to check this time. I was not giving up until I found something, like just something. Not that I necessarily think people need them in the game to win, but they are nice little tricks to have up your sleeve. And I was tearing that place up, especially after we got the clues. But even prior to the clues, I was like constantly looking, like constantly, because everybody is, and if you aren't, someone else is going to get it, and then what, So, for me, they're important. Sorry, my dog wants to come upstairs. For me, they're important.
Dogs are allowed.
She would have kept like hitting the door. And I was looking for them. So yes.
Was that something you're doing from the get-go, or once you got a clue, you're like, all right, let's do this now?
Oh, I mean, the whole time, like as soon as we got there, Joe and Mel were really, Mel was definitely helping Joe, and they were really focusing on the shelter. And I don't have like a whole lot of opinion on how to build a shelter. And so I didn't feel like I was doing much help, and they weren't really, and I had told them, just tell me what to do and I'll like totally do it and help out. But I felt like I was like kind of getting in the way. So I was like, great, there's some dry wood, I'll go look for it. Like I just like, I wanted to start the fire, but not necessarily because I felt like we needed it, but like it let me like break off a little and actually have some conversations. I did not have deep strategy conversations on the first day, but I definitely established some of my relationships while I was looking for firewood.
So what were some of those relationships?
Well, on the first day, I remember Tony and I, we definitely didn't have we're locked in just yet, but I could tell like our conversation was like, I feel good about you. I feel good about you. And it for me, he became like my person, like almost immediately. And then I had talked to Hannah a good bit too, because she was looking for wood. I don't know what we were looking for, to be honest. We were just kind of
probably
like coming back with a couple sticks. But I had some pretty good conversations with Hannah. I can't remember if I talked a whole lot with Trinica that day. I know I did after the outpost, and I think we went to the outpost that day, right?
You do. Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that soon.
Yeah. So I just like mingling basically. And I do know that I had some form of starting to form relationships with Tony and Hannah like right away.
You learned this season you're playing has redemption. What did you think of that from initially?
So like, I think redemption is great because if you get out early or something bad swap screw, you get a second chance. Like, I think it's a great opportunity. Do I think we need to vote 2 people back in? Absolutely not. And I also totally got screwed by 2 people getting voted back in. So it's just like, it's kind of hard. Like, I think it's a great opportunity if you do get swap screwed or idled out or voted out early. But in the same sense, like I told you like a little bit earlier, I voted all the way down to 10 people left in the game. And now I have to like go back and do it again. Like, man, for someone who didn't get voted out, I was like, oh gosh, we really have to like do this again. But I don't hate it, I guess is what I'll say.
You also have fire tokens. What were those 2 early on?
So all right, so here's Amos. He's saying, okay, this season we're going to have a battle back, or what? I don't remember what he called it. What is it called? What did they call it? A battle back. And then he was like, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So my brain's like going. And then he was like, oh, and then we're going to have fire tokens. And I was like, oh my gosh, one more, like, how am I going to keep up with all of this? And then he was like, and then a shot in the dark. And I'm like, for real? Like, this is like the new era of new era of new era. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to keep up with, like, my first reaction was, I really am not qualified for this. Like, I think they asked the wrong person to play this game. But I love fire tokens because I found so many of them and I love looking for them and they were everywhere. And that was just like fun. That was a fun aspect.
How many fire tokens do you give the Trinica?
I gave her, so I think it was Nate might have done a confessional with me. And it was like, I knew I was going soon. And I was like, hold on, we need to like look, let me just show you. So I pull out, I have one pocket of the tokens people think I have. And then I had another pocket of the tokens I had been banking and nobody knew I had. So I pulled them at 1,000.
Million tokens.
A million. So I pull them out and I was just like, here's like my treasures. And I like counted them. I want to say I gave her like 9 or 10 tokens. Because at that point, Tony had given me his tokens. I had found a bunch of tokens and I wasn't spending them on anything. So I want to say I gave her around 9 to 10 tokens before I left.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I had a lot. And I have a whole confessional. I mean, I couldn't even hold them in both of my hands. That's how many tokens I had.
So the final kind of twist this season is you have the outpost, right? So after the first reward challenge that you win, you and Trinica go from your tribe and go with Blake and Carl to the outpost. How was this experience for you?
So I can't remember why they picked me and Trinica to go. But I do know that in the back of my head, I was just like hoping it was either going to be Carl or Blake going with me. And then they picked both of them. So I was like, oh, this is like great. Carl stood out to me. He was annoying at first, but then I'm like, but there's something about him that I just loved. So, on the initial, Carl, I love you a lot. I know you now for who you are and you're a great person. But on the initial, I was like, I wanted to know more about Carl. So I was interested in that. So when we got to the outpost, he immediately was like, he's saying some BS. It was like, oh, we had way more tokens than them to begin with. And he's like, give us 2 tokens and then we'll go to rocks for the tarp. And I was like, no, like we're not. And then he goes, or I'll give you a pack of cigarettes. And me and Trinica are both like, we don't even smoke. Like, what? We don't want your cigarettes. And also we have plenty of tokens to buy the tarp. We don't need any of this. And at some point in the conversation, Trinica had said like, well, we could give them, because there was an extra bag of rice and they needed like 1 more token to get it. And she had said something like, we could give them 1 more token, and they could get the rice. And so I said to them, because in the back of my head, I thought 2 things. 1, we're going to deplete all their tokens if they just go ahead and buy this bag of rice, which we did. And 2, we're extending another token to them. So like later on down the road, it's kind of like an olive branch to both of them to let them know, like, we genuinely would like to work with you. Right. And they seemed to think it was great. We thought it was a good idea. And so we just went ahead with that. And then we walked back to camp. And when we were walking back to camp, we both decided to just tell everyone the tarp was like 1 more token than it was, keep it really simple and like move on from it.
And you said this was your first real opportunity to talk with Trinica.
Yeah. So when we were walking back, like I learned now that Trinica needs more check-ins to feel secure in your alliance. But for me, that was like we're good, girl. Like we are good. We're going to make it. We are going to be like a solid group. I was 100% in with her. And I actually would have loved it for us to eventually meet up again with Carl and Blake and try to figure something out there.
So by the kind of end of day 1, how are you feeling?
I felt pretty good. I mean, we just won. I am starting to like understand fire tokens and stuff like that. But we also were having just a really great time at camp. Mel had great questions that she was asking the group, not just your typical, like, where you're from, like, what's your family like, just stuff like that. But she was really like getting us to kind of like come out of our shell and like really go a little bit deeper than just like surface level. So I felt like we were all bonding pretty well. Was that the night of the storm?
We're leading into the storm.
Yeah. So, overall, like where I sat, I felt okay. I felt like my conversations that I had up until that point were pretty good.
Is there anyone you don't feel good about, or are you already thinking about who would be my first boot from this tribe?
No, but I did notice a couple things, like I noticed that, I noticed Mel's personality and Joe's personality weren't necessarily butting heads yet, but I could see some friction there. I could see that some things that like were important to Mel were not really important to Joe, or vice versa. And I could see just some friction, like a little bit happening there. I absolutely love Joe, and I think our first night was great because she really like opened up to us and was sharing a lot of personal information, and she was just like, she was great. I really enjoyed her. But as like the time kind of went on with her, she became more and more difficult to even like have like a real game conversation with. So that first night, I think it was pretty much like what they said in our cast assessment. We were like the Kumbaya tribe. We were all getting along, but I was noticing different things here and there. German slept. I know everyone keeps saying it. Sorry, but he liked to sleep. He's a sleepy boy. But he slept a lot. He slept a lot. So he was hard to get in conversations with. Danny was a little hard to get in conversations with. I just kept hoping that like the signals I was putting out to him, like he was snatching them up. But otherwise, that was kind of it for day one.
Yeah, speaking to like cast assessment, one of the things that was really interesting when I was talking to the projection during that was they basically said, Melissa's kind of the center of her tribe and she's running it, but the question is, does she realize she has that power? I'm curious, was that something that ever clicked with you while you were on that Okino tribe? Like, where you were standing?
To be honest with you, Steven, like even after hearing like the thing, like these deep dive podcasts and like just like some of the cast assessment and some of the things like even some of the players said and even some of those videos that got posted after I got voted out, I still didn't see myself as that. Like I just like for me, I was just out there to play, and I truly was like fiercely loyal in this game, and I found my people and I like had so much fun with them. So I was like hoping that we could just like move forward together. I didn't look at myself as a leader. I didn't look at myself as like running things. And like, I still like, I don't know. I guess even when I heard Carl said he was scared of me, I was like, what? Like, I just didn't see it. I still don't see it. But I'm flattered. Thank you for
whatever you're doing. You're correct with. So just keep it up. So how was the storm for you?
So that night, this I'll give you a little bit of a different outlook because my experience has been different than the ones that you've talked to already. So I'll try to keep this PG. But that night, while I was sitting like at the fire before I put pants on, I had shorts on, something got up my shorts and tore me the hell up. Like my entire butt, like all over the back of my legs, was torn up by bug bites. I don't know if it was a spider. I don't think it was a spider because they don't usually like bite that many times. But I was like, something got me like right before the rain really kind of started. So then when the rain started, we were all putting more clothes on, right? So now I have my pants on. These bug bites were so unbelievably painful and itchy for me that my legs were like twitching. So I wasn't worried about the rain. Like the rain was like the last thing on my head. And then when we were all like laying down in the shelter and the rain started really like coming down and we all sat up a little bit and they were doing it feels like a fever dream when they were like on the walkie-talkie. Like I don't even really remember like the walkie-talkie. The Pink Tribe was loud, so we could even hear them before the rain, just like talking at their camp. So when we heard them on the like walkie-talkie, we weren't sure if it was like for real, if they were joking. And at this point, it wasn't even like lightning has struck yet or anything. Like they were just like talking on it. And I know Joe needed her medicine at like a certain time. So at that point, I was like, maybe it's like time for her medicine. And they're like trying to get a hold of her. I was like in and out. I don't think I was sleeping, but I was like, it was kind of like fuzzy for me. And then it started like really coming down. I still was not scared. I was dry. My backpack was dry. And they're talking about evacuating. And it's like a 15-minute walk to the cabin. And all I keep thinking to myself is like, if we leave now, my stuff is going to get soaked. And like, I have kept my stuff dry. So in my head, it was more important for me to stay dry underneath the tarp. And also if other people wanted to leave, that'd be great because it would be more room for us underneath the tarp. But it was by no means like strategy for me. I wasn't like in my head thinking like certain people should stay and certain people should leave. I was more or less like, yeah, sure, go. I wasn't scared. I didn't see a tree get struck by lightning. The lightning and thunder was not scaring me, and the water was not like blowing sideways, and we had 2 tarps. So I felt okay that night, and I wasn't as if they didn't make me, I wasn't going to go over to the cabin.
With the people that stayed behind, there was some talk with both Millie and Tony's kind of like, hey, maybe this is a group that will stick together and kind of be alliance. Was that ever really a thing, or?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Like I felt great about the people that we stayed that night with. It was me, Ethan, Trinica, Mel, and Tony, and I was very content with that group of people. We would talk like periodically throughout the night, but like I said, I was in so much pain. Like the pain I had that night was probably the worst pain I had it like the whole time I was out there. Like it was I'm like, I don't know if it was like red ants, but I got torn up that night. So I was more focused on just getting through that.
Yeah.
And then I don't think anyone touched on this either, but as soon as we got up in the morning, we started looking for an idol as a group. Like we all went and were looking for it. Well, first I woke up and my lip was swollen from these bites, and my left hand was like really.
Oh my gosh, you were being eaten alive out there.
Yeah, no. So it was like I remember I pulled because we had our buffs. Like I had slept with my buff like up over my head and just like kept my eyes out like this. And I remember I slid my buff down, and I was like, I think Ethan was sitting next to me, and I was like, "Is my lip fat?" And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, it feels huge. And he's like, well, it doesn't look huge, but it's definitely like swollen. And then I looked at my left hand, and my thumb was little. And I was like, okay. So we called on the walkie-talkie. I called on the walkie-talkie and saw if they could get me some Benadryl. And then we went and looked for idols before everybody came back.
So during that second day, you have an outpost visit where Charlie and Tony from your tribe go with James and Sandra from Nankana. Charlie and Tony are going to get an idol clue. At what point does that clue make its way to you?
So I remembered this, but I remembered this like just recently. And I'm like, damn, I wonder if this is what Charlie wanted to talk to me about. So they came back from that. He might have not wanted to talk to me about this, but he said to me, I need to talk to you. But we never like circled back. So I don't know what that was, or if he maybe did talk to me about whatever it was, and I just didn't think it was that significant or whatever. And like I said, those couple days were a little bit blurry to me, but it was not far after they got back that Tony was like, hey, I want to talk to you. And so we were walking, I think maybe looking for wood. That was like our camp was awful. So we would just people kind of knew what we were doing, right? Everybody knew what everybody was doing. So we walked off to talk. And I think that was like our first, like, for real, like we're good with, like, he was like, I want to build trust with you. And I want to tell you that we got an idol clue. He read it to me, or he might have, so I don't remember, but I think he might've told me at one point, and then we walked off so that he could read it to me. And then he read it to me. And then I said to him, which his contribution to this was a way more than mine. But I said to him, I was like, so I haven't told anyone this, but we gave Carl and Blake an extra token so that they could get the rice. Which he was like, okay, whatever. But it was like our way of like solidifying that we had some trust there. But he was he told me. Charlie did not tell me that. So I can't remember though at what point. It was not very far after they came back.
Because you eventually, because Tony's mentioned, there's like 2 more clues that make its way to your tribe for that idol.
Yes.
At different points in time.
Yes. Yeah. So I got the second one. It was at the Steal the Bacon challenge.
Okay.
And
where was it?
We walked up to the mat, and it was literally just sitting on the mat. And I picked it up, and like this is how, I don't know. I want to hear everybody's point of view if anybody saw me do this, but I was the first one on the mat. So like, here's a whole tribe over here. Here's us. I'm the first one. I pick it up. I think I walked maybe back behind everyone, but still with everyone. I'm like pulling my shorts out. As a female, it's very hard to hide these things. So I'm like pulling my shorts out. I'm trying to see if I even have a little pocket. I don't have a pocket. I'm like literally just like looking around down my shorts and like fumbling a good bit. Then I like pick up my shirt and like shove it down my bra. And so I'm standing there, and they started like telling us about the challenge, and I'm like, and said it was going to be like a physical one. And I was like, well, it ain't going to stay there. Like I have to figure out where I'm going to put it. So I did find it, but it was on the mat at the Steal the Bacon challenge.
And where did the third clue come from?
The third one was the one that German wrestled
Melanie for. Gotcha.
Well, he, like slid in front of her.
And did you share that with the entire tribe, or?
No, he said he was going to. But at that point, I feel like between my clue and Tony and Charlie's clue, we had a pretty good we thought we had a good understanding of where it was.
So you win that first individual immunity challenge. It was we already kind of alluded to the kayaking portion of it.
Oh
how was that for you?
I was like, I wonder if Shauna's like cackling to herself right now. That's the kayak challenge, and we all have to do it. I wanted to like make eye contact with her, but I couldn't like find her in the crowd to do it. During that challenge, though, James like flipped the kayak over, and I think we all kind of on green took a like deep breath, like, okay, we can do this, like we'll be okay. But I genuinely felt bad. Like I felt bad for him. It was like, I'm sure he's somewhat embarrassed, or maybe he wasn't, but like I was just like, I feel bad. And I kept like kind of making like, oh gosh, I feel bad for him, like just kind of to myself, but out loud. And Carl looks over to me and goes, don't feel bad. And I was like, oh, okay. So like maybe James isn't in a great spot over there. I didn't know how to take that, other than like, it was just funny I also was like giggling, because that kind of stuff is funny to me, like little sarcasm and snarky comments. They're like, I don't know, it's like my sense of humor. So I thought it was really funny, but that was one of our first like, oh, I think I like Carl.
So over the course of the second day, did you feel like you had clear alliances beyond like these one-offs, or did you feel like there was a consensus name coming out, or what strategically was going on?
Yeah, so I definitely was still trying to get my bearings. I really wanted to get to, like, I didn't want to get, when I got to the first vote, I was going to try to see, like where, like I felt good with everyone, right? Except for Joe. And I just felt unsure where she stood with it. It wasn't that I even disliked her or didn't feel good about her. I even felt like, gosh, we don't even have a clear first vote. It's kind of how I felt like going into it. And I had a good relationship with everyone. I just needed a vote or two to really figure out who I really wanted to work with. Like, Hannah and I were pretty close, and she had said a couple times to me that like I was her number one, but I did not feel that way. But I also like, I never said it back. I said she was important to me, but I never said like, you're my number one. So I had roundabouts of what I thought were going to be my alliance. I just didn't have anything clear cut other than Tony. And I really wanted it to be like me, Tony, Mel, or me, Tony, Charlie. Like Charlie and Mel were like my close second, both of them. And
so on day 3, you lose your first immunity challenge. This is the silent relay race. What goes wrong for your tribe that challenge?
I can't remember what one was, which relay.
This is the one where like, you have to do charades at certain points. You have to carry a person in a stretcher.
This was the first time, like, okay, so this was the first time, like, okay, so Tony did the running portion of that. And I was the like one that had to be carried on the thing. And that, he was coming up running with that thing, and I could tell he was gassed. This was like the first time I was like, oh, my little baby, I want to go do this part for him. Like I really was just like, I don't know how to motivate him right now. Like, I don't know how to encourage him. And like, I could tell how tired he was. And then when I could see the phrase. And then when I saw the phrase, I was just like, we're done. Like, there's no way. There's like literally no way we're going to do this. Not that I didn't have like faith in Hannah and Charlie, but I was just like, we're going to have to make up a lot of ground. And we did, Hannah was in the front, and she was like holding the front of our stretcher, and she was a beast. Like, I was just like, come on, Hannah, you got this. And I was like trying to motivate her, and she like hauled ass. That was not an easy challenge. And she hauled ass. And then I can't remember who did our buoy sticks. I know it was Ethan and German, I think, and they killed it too. They got that done very quickly. But it was just not in the cards for us. But before we skip this challenge, I want to just note, we built this stretcher back at camp. We were supposed to build our structure before we went into the challenge. And so we were practicing carrying it and just seeing who felt the best on it and how we felt confident carrying it. And German was in the front and Tony was carrying the back part of it. And I was on it and we were walking and Tony sees the rattlesnake. I wasn't even scared of the rattlesnake. What I was the most scared of is I saw the fear in German's eyes and he was holding me. So I was like, my life is about to end. I wasn't even scared of the snake because it wasn't aggressive. It wasn't rattling. It kind of just went off. It was huge. It was huge. It was a huge rattlesnake. I was just I could just the fear in German's eyes. I don't think that look will ever leave me. I just remember thinking oh shit, we're done. We are done. They just chucked me over and I and ran away and I just picked up the structure because it broke and I carried it back. But that was pretty memorable. And one of those things I'm do I get a rattlesnake tattooed on my body? I don't know. I just feel it was one of those things it was a really cool moment. It was a scary moment. But that was a pretty landmark of that day. And we did that right before we went into the challenge.
So you lose the challenge. Jeff and Hannah go to the outpost. Does Hannah tell you she has this mutiny advantage immediately, or when does that information come to you?
Yes, she told everyone, and the way she presented it was this is a mutiny advantage for all of us because we were at this point almost every outpost we were pooling our tokens. Yeah. So we had a ton of them and we were all giving them, to the person that was going to the outpost. So she came back and presented it this is our advantage. If anyone gets swap screwed or whatever, we will use this for the group, is how she presented it to us. And I believed her. In my head, I was maybe not for everyone, but I don't know. That's how she presented it to us. And she told us that Jeff got it too. Yeah. And there was something about banana cream pie or banana pudding, something about, yeah.
Before we go into no, we'll do it. So what was the strategy for the Joe vote looking like?
I was sold she had an idol. Joe was in the woods. She was in the nooks and crannies. I'm thinking we have two. Did we vote her out yet at Steal the Bacon?
So she's the first out. So she's already gone by Steal the Bacon.
Okay. So we had one clue, right? So I'm that clue was pretty clear, or so we thought, was pretty clear. So I'm if it's not here, she's got to have it. I was so convinced that she had it. So to me, it wasn't going to be an easy vote. How are we going to figure this out? Because at this point, I hadn't had a whole lot of conversation with German and Danny. They're the only two. And it's not that I didn't want to work with them. I needed some something. I needed something to go into this with. And Mel had heard her name and Mel was important to me. And so she was well, I don't want to be, she was expressing her concerns and I heard them. And she, I can't remember who threw out Danny as the split vote. I really didn't want it to be Danny, but at this point, like I said, we didn't have a really deep conversation and he was kind of tied to Joe. And so when Mel heard that Joe was throwing her name out, I wanted Mel to feel comfortable. So that's how the 3 votes on Danny came about. I personally didn't think we needed to do that many, but I wanted her to feel comfortable, and however it was going to make her feel comfortable, I was willing to do it. So that's kind of how the Joe vote went for me. And right before Joe's vote, Joe and I had a great conversation, and I really, well-ish. It started out rocky, but it ended well. And it left me with listen, if she returns, I want to work with her. If we can have more conversations like this, I would be open. And even on Battle Back, when they would like ask me who I wanted back, I was like Mel and Joe. Like
Mhm.
I wanted Joe to come back. But it was just like too little too late. We had like 5 minutes before tribal when she talked to me. So
Was Joe your ideal first boot from your tribe?
man, yeah. I mean, I guess like from like, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because like I said, she was a great survivalist, but
Mhm.
she was like so hard to get anything out of. I extended an olive branch to her definitely one time. Like it was clear as day. And I think Mel might have been there and heard it because I walked away from that and she pretty much like told me she didn't really trust me. Like, and I was, well, okay. And so like, you know, and I'm the kind of person, I do not like to see anyone alone, especially my oldest is autistic and
Mhm.
just tends to like to be alone. So I don't like to see anyone alone. So when I see someone alone, I go and I conversate with them. So with her, every time I would go talk to her, it was very all over the place. And it was never about the game. So
Can you rank the players in your tribe from most to least important to your game coming out of the Joe vote?
coming out of the Joe vote. Okay. So coming out of the Jovo, it was Tony's number. He'll always be my number one.
Mhm.
He was like my person, and I felt that like right away. Whether I was his or not, I didn't care. I was like dying on that sword for him. So Tony was number one. I want to say Charlie and Mel were like tied for two for me.
Mhm.
I'm not sure exactly where just yet. Then it was Hannah, then Trinica, then Ethan. And then German and Danny, I was still trying to figure out after the Joe vote.
Yeah, one thing that I've kind of heard from both Tony and Melanie is that German's aim was a little out there, but Hannah squashed it pretty effectively.
Yeah, so the reason why Hannah was not as high up on my list is because I think it was night one or night two, we did some assessing of like previous relationships, games people had played, and yada yada yada, connections that we knew of.
Mhm.
She showed her hand to me really early, and I knew that either meant she trusted me or she slipped up. And the fact that German slept for 2 days and then all of a sudden was starting to be like protected, and she was like including him in vote numbers and like different things, I was like, there's more to this relationship with her and German than she's like actually letting out. And
Mhm.
she told me that she had a connection with him, but she downplayed it. And so Hannah showed her cards with her connections to me, like, I think too soon.
Mhm.
It was almost like my Outlast people are playing and I'd like you to play with us. And so in my mind, I'm like, I have a bunch of survival challenge people here and I'm not trying to play with them. I want to
Mhm.
play with the cast. Like nothing against, Mel, Jordan, and Shauna, but I wanted it to be like a clear slate. I don't like friend Viver and like just keeping connections because we just have them, and Debbie. I keep forgetting about Debbie. Sorry, Debbie. I love you. I just didn't know. Another thing with Debbie is like, I just didn't know how that was going to go for her. She's a Big Brother player, like true, tried and true. And so I just didn't know how Survivor was going to be. I know that she's a Lyme's disease survivor, and I just knew that being out in the woods was going to be hard for her. So, but aside from that, anyway, so Hannah showed her cards to me really soon, and the way I saw German all of a sudden, like being really important, the way she was fighting for him when his name was being brought up, it was like kind of tricky for me.
Danny is confirming that Melanie was there and heard it when like you had that conversation with Joe, and Joe kind of like tells you like, I don't really trust you.
Oh, hi, Danny. Yeah. Yes.
I'm not quite sure what we said in response to this, but
well, I loved him. And so on that, after the Joe vote, and I saw how Danny responded to that, and we did split on him, he was not my next vote. Like I was going for German after that, like, because I wanted to break up Hannah and German, and I just loved Danny, and I finally did get to talk to him like a little bit towards the end of going to vote for Joe, and then after. And I just he was one of those people that you you instantly love. And I loved him, and I like felt a connection with him, and I wanted to work with him.
Who'd you go up against in Steal the Bacon?
I hated that challenge. Like with all of my insides. I went up against Shauna. That's who I went up with.
Poetic.
Yeah, and we got up to it. My shoe fell off. I touched her when I was over the line. They like yelled at me. I'm like, I just hated that challenge. Like, I'm like, put me on a buoy in the water and I'll like shove you with a like pad. But the actual just like wrestling with a 10-pound medicine ball and my torn calf muscle, I was like, I'm good. Like, I hated it.
Talk to me a little bit about Shauna, because like, with Jordan and Melanie, you didn't play that season with them. Right. They were the year before you, and maybe they were there on production helping out. It's in your year.
I don't even think I met them in person ever. Yeah. Maybe saw Jordan. I don't remember. I really don't think I've ever met them in person aside from this game. Shauna, I was by no means like out to get her. We had a long talk after this game that like she was under the impression that I was making this harder for her, but I think some things got twisted along the way by the time it got to her.
Yeah.
The only thing that I had said, which now that I know that she was telling people she played season 10 and won, and I played season 10. So if I didn't tell people I played season 10 and she won, like they would have thought I was lying. Right. And so my closer people, I told them, hey, I'm not saying shut her down, but just keep that in your back pocket. Like, we just don't know how we're going to work with that. Plus, when I played with her, we really were never on the same tribe. We never really got to play with each other. We like came together at like final 7, so
like a marriage of convenience.
Yeah. And we were like, oh, we're moms. Like, we were in the mom group. It was just like, we never really got to play with each other. So it wasn't even a strong connection for me. It was more of a like, I'm not even really sure where this is at. And then, not to jump ahead, but like when we did the swap and I finally got with Jordan, I was like, where's Shauna at with this? Like, is she like wanting to work with me or what? And she was just like, she's open. And so I just like took that for what it was. And I shared information the same way anyone else did. Like, my connection to her is we played the same season and she won.
Josh saying that yelling at you was his favorite pastime all season.
I love Josh. At one point, we were doing the challenge where we had to hold the bars. I apologized to him after this, but we had to hold the bar, and he like said something. I was in the zone, and he like walked by and said something, and I was like, "Shut up!" And I remember telling him to shut up, and I'm like, "Oh gosh, I shouldn't have said that." But I loved Josh, and I loved his work. He's very talented.
So. Is there anything you want to talk about the Danny elimination? I think you already mentioned that your goal would have been German if this hadn't happened.
Yeah, Dan, that was sad. I think I was he did go out to Trinica, I guess, like right after the challenge or whatever. But when I went up to him to talk to him, he was like kind of starting to cry and then just told me where he was at. And all guards were like down at this point, like no game talk. I kept trying to think like, are you sure? Like I kept telling him like, are you sure you don't want to like try to stick this out? And then like, I don't remember who was filming us, but they like came in our faces with the camera. And I even did like a big sister moment. Like, do you want them in your face with this camera? Like, it was a real moment. And yeah, obviously I want him to do what's best for him. And if he felt fulfilled in that moment, like, I'm going to support that. But I think if Danny stayed in the game, it would look a lot different.
So you have a gross food challenge. It's individual. Both tribes go to tribal council. Trinica wins. This is my favorite debate of the season is no one knows exactly how this vote happened between Melanie and German.
Yeah.
Who do you recall voting for?
I know how it went. I just think that this person I don't think they're not fessing up. I just think they're truly not remembering that they did.
I'll name names. The 2 question marks I have on my spreadsheet are you and Ethan.
Yeah. So I know it was Ethan. Like okay. I 100% know it was Ethan because I can tell you where we were sitting at tribal council. And I know that he was checked to vote Mel. And when Trinica turned around, and I said, one of us is going to have to like flip a vote. She goes, well, I'll just flip a vote. So where Charlie stood with all of this, I don't know. Like, I still and I would love to hear. There's a lot of things I want to hear from Charlie on his thought process with a lot of these things, but that vote, I know it was Ethan, because this was really funny. So we got back to the living room. We had a living room because our camp was like too muddy. So we had this one spot that was a little bit drier and it had a big log we could sit on. So we were back at the living room and German's like, who voted for me? And he's like looking us all in the eye. And I'm like, I'm going to look him dead in the eye and I'm not going to say anything. Cause like at this point, I'm like, do I tell him? I don't know if telling him is even going to help. And if I don't, like, he's not going to have respect for me if I tell him. And if I don't tell him, he's still not going to have respect for me. Right. So I just like, whatever. Tony fesses up and tells him, I did because we were splitting the vote, whatever he said. And we walk away. And then like a few minutes later, I hear like Ethan be like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't have to tell him. And I was like, you didn't vote for him. But in my head, I was like, great, fine. Let Ethan think that he voted for German. So then I can just kind of like fly under the radar for a second. But in my head, I was like, why is he like so relieved right now? Because we walked away and he like, or like, I'm just not, he was like being weird and said that. And I'm like, what? Like, but I didn't bring it up. I didn't bring it up again because it's like one of those things that like, I could tell it really affected German and I didn't want to keep stirring that pot. I just didn't.
Yeah. So one of the key parts of this vote is was the alliance in the Sexy Six? I don't recall. You have a group of 6 that has come together. How did that come about?
So I would love to know the answer to this question because like I've asked a couple people, like I kind of remember it. I know that after our reward challenge where we got to go to the park, that there were certain people in a car. I want to say it was Ethan, Tony, Trinica, and Hannah were in the car. And then I guess after that, they brought it up, like each one of them individually brought it up to me that they said they also felt good with me and would like to bring us in. They never presented Charlie to me in that group. And then I automatically was like fine with it because I liked Charlie. I had a good rapport with Charlie and I had good conversations with Charlie and I trusted him. So I don't remember when we titled ourselves the Sexy Six. I was still working with Mel, or at least my intentions were to work with Mel. And like I said, I still everybody was still in the game. I was still trying to figure out who I really, really wanted to work with. And then we were starting to vote together. And it was like, I could tell, I knew my pecking order in that group. I didn't know that a few of them were like saying they were scared of me or wanted to target me soon. But I felt good with the 6. And I felt like our votes were all aligning for the most part. But I don't remember when we called it the Sexy Six, and I don't even really remember how it was formed. I loved them, but I don't remember.
So you have this alliance of 6. You have these 2 outsiders, German and Melanie, and it seems like it's a bit of a proxy war of who gets to keep their side alliance.
Yeah, it was a tricky one. It was a tricky one because at that point, German, I never really got to have a one-on-one with him. It was always with Hannah watching over us. And I was trying to maintain trust with Hannah. So I didn't want to just be like, look, he's important to you. We're getting rid of him. I wanted her to see that like we were valuing her as a alliance member and that we were valuing her opinion of him. But in the same sense, I was like, I personally knew Mel was so much better to keep in the game for my game than him at that point, especially because I want to say it was Hannah came up to me and was like, listen, German thinks that you're not a girl's girl. And I'm like, wait a second. So this was another thing that kept coming up. I'm like, is this a relationship way more than you're letting on to? Like, where did this even come from? German was just asleep for 2 days. Like, what are you even talking about? How would he even know if I'm a girl's girl? Like, he has no idea. Like, he's been literally snoring underneath the shelter for 2 days. Like, how would you even know that? So there was like lots of like alarm bells going off there. So like me and Tony both discussed this multiple times that we knew keeping Mel was so much better, but we were like tiptoeing.
Trying to get suggestion. Maybe he had a dream.
Yeah, it was a little dream that was like, Melissa's not a girl's girl. I mean, he was like, at that point, I don't know if you would call me a girl's girl or a guy's girl, but I was just like going off of who was wanting to work.
Is that accusation that you're not looking to work with the woman, you want to work with the men instead?
Yeah, I guess. I guess that was his perception because of like him not being like of importance, and I had like Tony and Ethan like and Charlie up a little bit more important than him at that point. I don't know. I don't even know if he actually said that. Like I don't even know. But I know that those like things kept happening. And I was like, look, I got to figure this out and I have to figure out how to do it. And at one point we did have her say out loud, okay, I'm going to vote him out to show you guys that I want to be in this group. I don't know if she meant it. I think she did it. If not, it was very believing. But I was definitely putting the pieces together that he was really important to her.
And so going into this vote, was it just like, we're just going to do a 3-3 split? And
no.
So what was the vote supposed to be?
No, it was German. Like German was the vote. I think it was 4-3 because Hannah was like, it's fine. I just don't want to vote for him. So I'm going to vote for Mel. And then, she did that a lot in the game where she was like, if there was somebody being voted that she didn't want to vote for, she would just like let everyone know that she wasn't going to vote for them. I guess it was like her way of jury management. I don't know. And then she would just like, that was what she said she was going to do. Mel was obviously going to vote for German. I was voting for German. Tony was voting for German. And I want to say we were going to do, there was a couple votes going Mel's way, but it was not supposed to be a split. The split happened at Tribal when he got the scroll.
Well, it ends up being a 5-3 blindside on Melanie. You probably don't feel great coming out of this.
I don't feel great, but I also still don't feel awful either. I think more or less at this point, we're like, we have to find this freaking idol. We have to find this idol. Like we thought it was at this one spot with a big X and we tore it up. At this point, I think I had told Hannah about the idol clue too. So we were all looking for it. I told her before German got the third clue, and then German got the third clue, and we were like mad dash after that trying to find it while he was like running around trying to find it himself. It was chaotic. But we were determined to find this idol.
So had this original Kina group gone to their tribal council, what would you have liked to have happen?
I'm pretty sure German would have went. I don't know. I don't know that it would have went any other way. It would have either been German, or I know that at the German Mel vote, I know Ethan's name was getting thrown around.
How come?
So I don't know if Ethan would have been an option at that point. I think Trinica would have shut that down fast. And I probably would have too, because I shut it down the first time I heard it. So I don't know that he would have been the vote, but I think maybe his name would have circulated a little bit.
But thankfully, you have a tribe swap. And so that question never needs to get answered. And your tribe is interesting because due to a swap at 15, you are in the tribe where you're in the minority from the get-go. So you swap with Trinica and Ethan, and then you get Carl, Jordan, Maddie P, and Jeff from the non-Kana tribe.
Yes. So in my head, I didn't think this was all that bad. So I wasn't surprised that Hannah didn't play the mutiny advantage yet. Oh, hold on. I'll say goodnight to my kids. Hold on. Night. Yes, I'm off. No, I have to work tomorrow. You're going to Noni's house. Yay. Okay. Good night. I love you too. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fully allowed. Thank you for doing this.
So we're swapped in, and I don't remember if she could have played that mutiny yet, but I don't think we really, in my head, I didn't think we really needed it because I couldn't wait to work with Jordan. Hannah had told me if we ever get swapped and you're with Jeff, just tell him you're with me. I did not know that Ethan and Maddie were connected at all, which was silly now looking back on it. But I
mean, Australia is a big continent. I don't think you would assume every Australian would know each other in Tennessee.
It was silly. And then I didn't know Ethan was gunning for me so early on. And Trinica was like, I really wanted her to be like high on my trust, like on my alliance. I just could tell she was like teetering with how she felt about me. But as far as me and her went, I was going hard for her, regardless. So I didn't feel terrible about this swap, even though we were in the minority. Oh, and Carl, Carl, I was like, I'm going to have to try to figure out how to get him to work with us. Like immediately was how I like thought about it. Cause I couldn't wait to be with Carl. So I really didn't think that our swapped tribe was that bad.
And so were you thinking like, all right, I'm gonna offer up Trinica or Ethan as a vote, or maybe like the pink will flip and I'm gonna be able to target one of the four of them?
So my first conversation, I can't remember if it was with Jordan or Carl, but my first conversation with both of them went well. So I don't remember who came first, but I talked to Jordan, and Jordan was pretty much, it was like going to be Trinica. But at this point, I don't think she realized that Ethan wasn't going to let that happen. So we had a very, very good conversation. We were like locked in, and I don't know if this is true or not, because I haven't gotten to listen to her podcast yet, but I think that because of the way the chips fell, she had no other choice but to vote for me. Because one of the things that she said to me was, I'm not effing voting for you unless it's for you to win. And then like 3 seconds later voted for me. But I think it was because I truly think that her hands were tied, and I believed that. If it wasn't, good on her. She like totally got me. And then I had a conversation with Carl, and it was so solid. Like it was quick. It was to the point. Like Carl's my kind of person. Like he is like my love language. Like he is like straightforward. He gives it to you like it is. And he was like, I'm flipping. And I was like, well, who do you want? And he was like, Jeff. I was like, great. I didn't care who he picked at that point of his pink tribe, as long as it was like, not us. So he was like, I'll do a pink, but we got to do a green next. And I was actually like, fine, we can do that, So we had a really good conversation. He was like, who are you working with? I straight up just told him Tony. Like Tony is my person. I will gladly lose to him at the end. Like I didn't say that, but like that's who that's who I'm with. He told me he was with Kiri, and we kind of went about the rest of like camp day. Do you want me to keep going?
And so you have that blindfold challenge, you lose it. What's the scramble look like after that challenge?
Yeah. So I don't remember if I found the idol. I think I found the idol after that. So when I first got my idol clue, I did get an opportunity to look for it without anybody around, because I thought I knew where it was, because my clue was very confusing. So now knowing where all of these idols were, I don't know what the hell they were thinking when they had this green idol, because it was not as simple. And not to mention, our idol went through that crazy storm attached to a log. So it's like, did it float down the stream? I didn't know where it was. So when I looked originally, and then I kept looking in that same spot that we were certain it was going to be, we just couldn't find it. Right. So my clue, I wish I had it up here with me. It was like when paths diverge, something about paths splitting. Right. And then another thing about the X marks, it wasn't X marks spot, but something about, I can't remember, but it was about paths splitting. So at the green camp, here's our shelter, and the paths did split. One went up this way and one went up that way. And I purposely would go to the bathroom down this hill, because I had a feeling that's where this idol was. So I would go to the bathroom and like look around and then like come back up. And so we lose the challenge, I think, and everybody's in the shelter. I was like, you know what? It's just starting to dry up. We really need logs like to sit on around the campfire. So at this point, I'm still looking, but I'm still getting logs for us to sit on. Everybody's laying in the shelter. I think like Jordan, Jeff, Maddie, I think like Trinica or Ethan, one of them was like laying in the shelter. The other one was, I think it was Ethan, because Trinica was she had her clothesline, and she was like
Mhm.
taking a moment to herself because I think she was kind of having a day. And I'm walking and I'm like, we are so freaking dumb. There is a whole nother, like the path splits, but then when you go down this one, it splits again. And we never went down that way. And I don't know if it was just because it was so muddy or what. And so I'm walking and I see an X and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. But at this point, I still didn't find it. So I found a couple like decent sized logs. Like Carl's like going away, like chopping, building the fire. I like bring this log over. I found another log. It was like long, but like kind of like weird on the end. It was really wet. So what is she saying? What?
What? I think this the whole other path that no one's ever seen.
That's how I felt too. So then I bring the log over. I bring this log over to the fire and I tilt it upwards so that it would dry out. And I'm like leaning all these logs like around the fire to dry out. And so I walk back and I see a freaking green string underneath this log that's drying out by the fire. I walk over, I kick it down so that no one else can see what I just saw. Carl's right in front of the fire, like doing all this stuff to the fire. Everyone's in the shelter. So I sit in the shelter right in the middle and I'm staring at it. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? In my head, I'm thinking like German just tackled someone for something right in front of them. One of them's going to walk up and maybe see something and just take it. Like I have to do this. I don't care if they see me. I have to get this idol. So I get up and I said, I really don't want Carl to chop this log is what I said. So I pick the log up and carry it face down, get around Carl, rip out the idol, shove it down my pants, throw the log to the side, and just go straight down the hill in front of everybody.
And no one probably even notices.
No one even noticed it. And I shove it down my pants. And like, that's where I was going to the bathroom. So, and I was on my cycle. It was a great excuse. I walk down, I go to the bathroom, I walk back up, and everyone's still just tending fire camp life. And Pete is in our living room, like playing on his phone because no one was recording me. And I was so upset because I'm like, if anything, I wanted the footage for that. Like, that was so like, that was like my moment. That was my moment in the game. And I go up to Pete and I sit down. I was like, what are you doing, Pete? And he's like, playing a game. And I was like, I just found an idol. And he was like, and I said it so like, because I didn't want them to see me say anything. I was like, so I think I just found an idol. I didn't even open it at this point. I just like shoved it in my pocket. And he was like, well, let's go up here and do a confessional. And he like brought me up the hill and I like opened it up and it was like revealed that it was an idol. And I was just like, okay. So at this point, I'm making it past this tribal. Whether I play it for myself, I was going to play it for Ethan, I was going to play it for Trinica. I played this game so fiercely loyal, which is like new to me. And I was like, I'm going to get us through this. Like, we are going to get through this. I'm going to convince Carl. I wasn't going to tell him about my idol yet, but I wanted to I really wanted Carl to be with us. I wanted to work with Carl. And I felt very confident going into this vote that we would be okay.
We'll have to check with Parker, but it would probably been a Reelfoot first if you burned the idol in your campfire at camp.
I mean, it was drying out. I don't know. It was, and the thing is, it was wet, so it was like really went through like the whole storm and everything. And our camp was mud. Like your shoes would get stuck in it, like, and your feet would come out of your shoe. Like it was bad. So. That idol, yeah, it was soaking wet. Like the paperwork was soaking wet. Like my string was like dark string. It wasn't even like light green anymore. It was like a dark green. But yeah, it was crazy. And here I am just like, yeah, like I know we're sitting ducks. Like I had to like keep it all in. Like it was crazy because I always said to myself, like, if I get on CBS, my heart's going to literally stop if I find an idol.
So you have an ad in your pocket. You're going to the tribal council soon. Who are you looking to vote for? Well, I think you said like Carl said, vote Jeff, and like works for me. Do you think it was to be like you, Ethan, and Trinica and Carl, or?
Yeah, so this is like, nothing to Jeff, but I knew he wasn't with me. He is hands down the worst liar I've ever seen in my life. Like, we were having a conversation. I was like looking him dead in the eyes, and he was like scanning everywhere else, and there was no one around us. So I knew he was not with me. And I'm repeating myself, and he's repeating himself. And I was just like, whatever. Carl comes up to me. He's like, it's gonna be you. They're voting for you. And I was like, great. Then I'm just going to play this idol for myself if I have to. So at this point, I'm still thinking we have the numbers. And I just Ethan came to visit in Wilmington, and we had a lot of time to discuss this. And I still don't understand why he did this. But Ethan knew I had an idol. He wanted me out, and he had many allies to get it done. And he still figured out a way to screw that up. So we were going to tribal. He's like I could tell the stress he was under, and he was like, his eyes were like watery. He was like red, and he was like, I'm worried for you. The second he said that to me, I was like, I'm playing this idol. Like, I'm playing this idol. And then we had to grab our torches to walk into tribal. And I looked Maddie dead in the eyes, who is like a frantic person when he's nervous. And I looked him dead in the eyes, and I was like, so it's me, right? Because you haven't even made eye contact with me or anything. And I could feel like his like heart come out of his butt. Like, I could like literally see it all like happen. So I was like, I already knew they were voting for me. Carl warned me. But now at this point, because Ethan's worried for me, I'm like, I'm going to maybe play this idol. I'm pretty confident I'm going to. And then, what solidified it was when Jeff came up and played his shot in the dark.
Because he was worried about interesting.
Yeah. So the whole scramble, like I knew, like I wish she was watching so she could like comment on this. Like, I'm pretty sure Jordan didn't want to do that. But she had no other choice, which I get. And I totally understand why she did that. But I knew the votes were coming to me, and I knew like the people that I talked to were going to vote for Jeff, or at least, so I thought. So I figured at this point, well, if I play my idol, then Jeff will definitely go home. And if he doesn't, if he has an idol, then I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Then we revote.
So
you see 4 votes appear with your name. You see 3 votes appear with your name on it. Are you surprised by that, or you're like, oh, that seems about what I expected?
Well, so I would like to think I'm sharper than this, but the whole like watching, the whole like figuring out Ethan and like Trinica were starting to like maybe start to target me, wasn't like a very quick, clear vision for me. It came like in chunks, and when we left that tribal, like Carl's all pissed off. He just burned his idol. I'm stoked that I just played an idol and sent Jeff home. I know we're going to walk out there and Pink's going to be like, what the hell just happened? Maddie's crying. Ethan's crying. Trinica's stressed as hell. And Jordan's like hyperventilating. Like, what am I going to do now? Like she came back. I told her, I can only imagine what the thoughts were going through their head. And I'm over here like, yo, why are you so upset? Like, I'm like, why are we so sad? Like, I was like so on a high that I just like played an idol correctly. And I'm like, for the benefit of us, like, look, like me, Trinica, Ethan, Carl, we all just like made it through that. And I couldn't understand why everything was so sad and messed up. And then it all started kind of coming. And I was
because you're probably pretty confident, like, well, Carl really made it seem like he was with me. So if Carl,
I never second guessed Carl. I definitely knew he was just upset that he played his idol like and didn't need to. I knew that was where his emotions were coming from. And we probably could have shared better notes with I have an idol, you have an idol. We probably could have done that, but I didn't feel it was necessary yet. And so I knew where Carl stood. I started to figure out when we were in the barn waiting to go to the next challenge that Ethan was the one to vote for me. And I think he did just tell me that he voted for me. And I very quickly looked at him and said, it's fine. Like, it's fine. I'm good with it. Like, I'm still with you. I'm 100% loyal to you, and we will figure it out. Like, I very quickly got over it with Ethan. Later on, like later in the game, there were certain things that happened and he kept doing things that, I will be very honest, like I was like, I wouldn't say I was like, my feelings were hurt, but I was like sad. I'm like, this is like, we were having so much fun as a group. And I'm like, you just had to go and like, just ruin it. But no, I very quickly forgave Ethan for that.
Was Jeff the right person to idle out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Of the three, absolutely. And I see that even more now. And like, again, no offense to Jeff, but he had so many connections, and the Outlast people were like, stay in Outlast. And I knew that he was probably the big, like a glue to that, like a big part of that. So I think that we knocked down a giant, so to speak, a little giant.
So a lot of fun is going to happen when you arrive at the next challenge. Talk me through what goes on here.
Okay, so I can tell you exactly what happened because I feel like everyone's kind of blurry about it, right? So we get up to our mats. You can tell there's a lot of like, what? Like, how did Jeff go? I could tell Tony was like distressed. Like he looked like he had been crying all day. And he, at this point, now that I just had all this crazy shit just happen to me with my alliance members, I'm like, Tony is like who I need to like make sure is okay. And so like, he was like all I could really see when we walked up to that mat. And then, Hannah looks over to me from her mat to my mat and said, do you need me to play the mutiny? And I said to her, I need someone. Like I needed someone from Pink who was working with us to come over. Like not me go there. I couldn't go there because I would leave Trinica. Carl would just be the next vote. Like I even in that split second, I knew that I couldn't go there. And so she whispered to German, and I thought she was going to send German over. And I was like, no. Like, never mind. Like, don't do that. Forget it. And then she was like, no, I think I want to give this to you. And then I said, fine. I like word for word said, screw it. Shit got weird over here. So I took it and shoved it in my pants. And I look at Tony and he's whispering to Ethan, help me. So I was like, take this. Like, I didn't even like whisper. I was like, take this right now. If you need help and you're in danger, take this and come over here. I had just asked her to send me someone. And so like, come over here. And I knew that Hannah and Charlie and German were going to be fine because they were like a pretty tight three when we were all on green anyway. And I knew that Hannah had her connections with like Sandra, and she had mentioned a couple names to me. So I knew she was going to be okay. They took it a whole different way, which I guess I get it. You know, I do. But like when I explained it to them, it was by no means to throw Hannah and Charlie under the bus. That wasn't it at all. I just got freaking screwed over here and I need to like maintain my numbers. And the best thing for me was to bring like someone from green over back to the tribe again. And that's how the mutiny. And at this point, I got to tell you, I blacked out. I didn't even know that Jordan didn't mutiny at first. Like I didn't even know she didn't. And that it was after the fact.
So let's run through some hypotheticals.
Sure.
Jordan mutinies. Let's say Jordan mutinies immediately, and now you're in a tribe with Carl, Ethan, Trinica, Maddie P, and you. Do you feel better about that with Jordan gone?
No.
Or even worse?
Probably worse because I had a conversation with her before we walked out. Like she was stressing and she was like, I said I wasn't going to play a game where I had people telling me what to do. And I said, listen, my door is still open. Like this didn't close my door with you. Like, so I knew if anything, like maybe we could like work together. So no, her going over, it wouldn't have been.
Because it seems like this is a moment where you and Hannah's relationship kind of goes in different directions. Because Hannah is not thrilled with Tony getting this advantage and using it, so it seems.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. I understood where she came from. And I explained myself to her, and I explained myself to Charlie as well, because he was pretty hurt by it as well. And I feel like we had a good conversation afterwards. Yeah, I mean, without jumping too far ahead. You know, I understand. I totally understand why she felt screwed. But there was just some things that happened after that I just don't even think were necessary. So.
Okay. Do you think there's anything else you could have done in this moment that could have helped you but had a different outcome?
No, I don't regret it for 1 second, because the group of people that was left on that tribe was the best time I've had the whole game. I enjoyed that group of people more than anything. And like I said, I played a fiercely loyal game. And if we didn't go to tribal, like Maddie, I'm pretty sure people could tell from that tribal, like I was bawling voting him out. Like that was not what I wanted to do at all. And that group of people I had the best time with them. So I do not regret using the mutiny the way I did. The only thing I regret, the Musty Misfits forever. We had the best time. Like when I tell you we laughed, we freaking laughed the whole, even down to like me, Ethan, and Trinica, that were the three left. Like we were still crying, laughing the night I got voted out. So, I don't regret it at all. The only thing I regret is that battle back. That otherwise I don't regret the mutiny at all.
So talk about the name, the Musty Misfits. I don't think I've got the exact origin. Maybe I have. I forgot. Tell me about this name. How does it come to be?
Yeah, I don't know who said it. But it came the day that we were all like, there was a day where they left us at our camp for like a significant amount of time. It felt like hours. And so we were just like laying around in the shelter, like some were taking some naps, but we were not talking game at all. We were literally laughing, telling stories. Maddie was farting. Like we were like, it was so fun. Like it felt like a real genuine friendship. And it was, like I said, my favorite moment of the game. I want to say Austin was with us at that point. He was like our handler at that point, and even you could tell he was like enjoying our conversation. Or maybe Parker was there a little bit. I don't know, but we just had I don't know. Our dynamic was unique. And it came about while we were in there. I think maybe Maddie was farting, and then they were like, "Oh, we smell so bad," because we did. I kept my armpits, like every time I lifted up my arm, I was like, "Ugh," we smell so bad. And then someone said we were the Misfits, and then we were like, "Well, we're the Musty Misfits." So that's how the name came about. I'm pretty sure when we were in the shelter that day.
So when were you thinking the merge would beat this season?
There was a few times we thought the merge was happening. I think the time we ran when we were running with the jug of water.
Final 12.
Yeah, I thought right after that we would be done. Yeah, we all did.
Let's see. Let me double check. I'm counting this right. Yeah. So that was the final 13 immunity challenge was Hot Pursuit. And you're like, okay, once there's 12 people left, we'll merge.
Yeah.
Then you have another challenge.
Yeah, and then I was
another challenge.
In my head, I was like, we're really gonna go down to 10, like, and I really had a lot of confidence in us. Not that I felt like we were arrogant, but we were just like working very well together. I want to know. So the blindfold challenge, Maddie did a great job calling, and we were talking a little bit about puzzles before we went into it. It was like me, him, and Jeff. We were talking about some puzzles we were good at that we thought would be good at, and we were hoping would be this challenge. So Maddie said he wants to be a caller. I was a little skeptical of that because of his accent, but he did a great job. It was like 100% his strength. He should do that for a living. And then we
pharmacy, just shout at people.
Yeah, just like shouting and telling us like 3 minutes to the right or whatever he was saying. It was great. And then we get to the puzzle, and his confidence had me fooled. Like he was like, I know this puzzle, or he thought he got it, and he'd be like, we got it. And I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, cool, we got it. We were nowhere near getting it. So he like definitely gassed me up like he was like this puzzle master. And maybe he is, but like that in that moment when we were doing that cube puzzle, I knew Maddie was not a puzzle person, or one that I trusted at this point. Me and Trinica, now that we've talked about it, actually know how to do that puzzle. I have it downstairs.
Which puzzle is this?
It was the one where we had to collect the puzzle pieces blind, and then we had to create a cube.
Okay.
And I actually definitely know how to do this puzzle. And I was trying to insert myself a couple times to tell them that like the one that was like a horseshoe has to like go in the middle. But there was too many things. And like I said, Maddie seemed so confident that I kind of just like took a step back. But that was the time that I learned like Maddie is not as confident as he's coming off in these puzzles. And then the next challenge where we had to toss the beanbag on the square and then do a puzzle. I saw the puzzle, like I knew how to do this puzzle. And every time I would get like 5 pieces together, he would move one. And I was trying to not be like mean, but I was like, stop. Like I already saw that you can't do this other puzzle. And like, and you're acting so confident, like you got this one, but like you didn't do it. Like he wasn't doing it. And he was like messing up all my pieces. So I was just like, finally, when we were like getting down to the wire, I was like, please just let me like finish this puzzle. But Maddie, like, it was like at that cube puzzle when I was like, okay, Maddie might not be as good at these puzzles as he's coming off.
What's your thoughts seeing the boot order on the non-Kana tribe with Blake, then Shauna, then Jordan going out?
I was shocked, like, especially the Shauna then Jordan. I had a big reaction, I think, for both of them. I didn't expect it because anything that I heard was Shauna was doing really good over there. And Jordan, I just assumed because of the way things kind of went, maybe like the way she was inserted, it just like I was shocked that she went, but I was also kind of not because of the way things were falling at that point. But Shauna, I was like shocked, like totally shocked.
Probably been very different having Jordan in the merge versus Sandra for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Simple answer. Yes.
It's that last immunity challenge at the final 11. You lose it, and you're going to tribal council, and you have this tight group of 6. You spent kind of almost a full day with at this point, because from day 4 to day 5. Was it always going to be Maddie P?
Yeah, I mean, the scroll that Sandra handed to her, which I will say props to Sandra. That was one thing she did that did definitely impress me. If it was her idea, it was very, very impressive. Because we were really trying to figure out what that was. Because at this point, Carl just flipped on his whole alliance for us. I'm not going to do that to him. And then Tony was coming up with a 3-2-1 to get out Ethan. And at that point, my brain was so frazzled from everything that I remember going up to Tony and being like, you just have to take the reins for this one because I'll do whatever you say. Like, I just didn't care. I just didn't want to flip on Carl. Obviously, Carl was like end game for me. And, Ethan was so difficult to work with when Maddie was in the game, but I loved us as a group. But we couldn't be a group. So yeah, I think Maddie P. Because if we vote Ethan, then we lose Trinica. It would have been even messier for us merge. So yeah.
Did you know that Ethan was going to be voting Carl?
Yes.
Okay. So there's really no surprise at this vote for you.
I even told them I was voting Carl.
Oh. Okay, so there's maybe a surprise that it wasn't a 3-3 tie. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they thought Trinica was definitely going to vote with them. I don't know if they believed me or not, but I was like, fine, I'll just vote. Like, I was crying the whole time. So whether they like picked up on my tears were for Carl or my tears were for Maddie, it didn't matter. I was just like, I hated that vote, and I just had to do what I had to do. So I did tell them. I remember running up with my torch because I was like running behind, and I ran up to Ethan and Maddie, and I was like, it's got to be Carl, is what I said to them.
So Maddie goes out. With that, we have the redemption challenges. Eventually, one male, one female player is coming back in the game. What would have been your ideal players to come back in the game at this point?
Blake and Mel.
Okay. I don't think Shauna's the worst, but so how'd you feel about seeing that Shauna and Maddie P were the two coming back?
I just really for Maddie P, I knew he was not coming back to us. Like I knew, like I have a clip. I recorded it and put it on my phone so I could like watch it again. When the people that come back from from the battle back. Everyone's clapping, and I'm like, because we just got Ethan to finally be like, all right, guys, I'm here with you. I'm working with you. Like, and then now Maddie's back. We just voted him out. There's no way in hell he's going to work with us. At least that's how I looked at it. And then Shauna was a wild card for me. I didn't know if she wanted to work with me. I didn't know if she didn't want to work with me. I didn't know what kind of relationship she had built. So to have two people that I was like, I don't know, come back into the game after we just voted all the way out to 10 was difficult. And I was not thrilled. And that night was awful.
Well, you merged with 12. And so I guess let's talk about the merge piece, then we'll talk about what is your agenda and things you want to accomplish coming to merge. So let's talk about the merge piece.
It was awful. Like I could feel the tension. I was uncomfortable. I'm a little bit of an extrovert, but I'm also kind of an introvert. And so like being with all these people all of a sudden with now food in front of us, and I have to make like educated decisions on how much food I want to eat and how sick I want to get when I get back to camp. And then I'm like sitting next to Charlie and Sandra, and I'm getting weird vibes. And the French fries were never even going to be a thing for me because I didn't even get them until like the bread pudding was like put out. And so it was like the food portion of it. I was trying to be grateful and I was trying to be friendly, but I hated every second of it. Like I was just like so uncomfortable.
Yeah, so were you kind of looking to your original Okina tribe members of Hannah, Charlie, and Jordan, just like, ooh, they're not with me anymore? Is that what you were getting?
Not yet. I knew I was going to have some damage control to do. I knew that I had to get to Hannah first to just get a feel for where she was at. Honestly, I didn't even think I was going to affect Charlie as much as I did. I thought Charlie was always going to know that I had his back regardless. Like, regardless of if he had different alliances and we went different ways for a little while. I just didn't think he was going to be as mad as he was. Because I like genuinely had his back regardless. Like even when we went to the majority 6 and we were getting picked off, like I still was like, his name went around a couple times and I was just like, no.
Was he mad because you didn't give him the advantage?
No, he thought that I intentionally was screwing him and Hannah.
Gotcha.
And I wasn't. So after we ate, I got to talk to Hannah and like figure some things out. But it wasn't until after the food.
And so how were those conversations?
Yeah, I gotta be honest. We were very like, I didn't think it went that bad. Like she said to me, she was like, Melissa, I told her how I thought about it. She understood where I was coming from. And she goes, I gotta warn you, there's going to be confessionals where I told them that you are like dead to me. And then I also like went and told Shauna all this stuff about her. And so she said all these things to me that she did when she was mad at me. And so I was like, okay, well, you know, I didn't really care about all that. All I was like more or less like, look, I told you, she didn't know Ethan flipped on me. So I had to tell her that. And she was like, oh, and then she got mad at Ethan for flipping on me and went and like yelled at him. So I just didn't, I don't know what Hannah was thinking. And I think this was a really poor move for her because did it put her in the majority of 6? Yes, it absolutely did. But she was totally on the bottom of that 6 the whole time and pretty much was always going to be the 6th person out from what I understand and what I could see from a perspective of outside looking in. So
well, I guess what gave you that like was there any, what made you think that? I'm curious.
So I had a really, really good talk with Maddie P at one point, post like after merge, and he even threw Hannah's name out. Like, I don't trust her. I don't want to necessarily work with her. Maybe not along like those lines, but he threw her name out to me. So in my head, I was like, okay. And then after that, I heard that Kiri was like kind of like not so certain about Hannah, or Hannah wasn't necessarily like end game for her. And I could tell that Hannah was that people were keeping me and Hannah around because we were butting heads at that point. And so that to me was an indicator that people weren't really looking at Hannah as a strong ally.
There's two new players in the merge you're meeting. You've met really everyone else. So you're meeting Sandra and Kiri for the first time. What were your thoughts about them?
Yeah. So Sandra, I still don't know Sandra. And I don't know that I will. I mean, outside of the game, maybe we could get to know each other. But as far as the game went, she put a door up for me and was never going to let me even. The only time I got to talk to her was the day we were all allowed to go sit on the dock. And she told me about her dogs and her son and a little bit about what she does for work. Otherwise, she didn't talk to me after the game. She didn't talk to me during the game. She shut me down. She shut me out. Anytime I would try to give any kind of like strategy talk to her, she just she would talk like, I know that they try to paint me as this bad person, but they were like pretty much talking down to us and I didn't have any authority. So how could I be talking down to them? And I remember there was this one conversation where she was just like basically telling me that I was stupid for thinking that I could try to get her to flip and come with me. And that's not at all what I was trying to tell her. And all these people started joining the conversation. I looked at her and I said, Sandra, can we just go talk like just me and you? And so we walked away, just me and her. And I said to her, I was like, I'm not trying to have you come with my 5 and be on the bottom or whatever we were at that point and be on the bottom. I'm trying to tell you that I'm a number and we can shuffle some things around here. And that was the only time she like let me talk. And then she was just like, yeah, and like walked away. Like she shut me down big time, was made me feel like very unimportant. I don't know if that was her intention, but I just knew Sandra was never going to work with me. So that was my first impression of her. Carl sung Kiri's praises. So I was so excited to meet Kiri. I had one interaction with her that kind of set off alarm bells back at the charade challenge. She had told me about the storm night and some things that had happened that night, and then Debbie being voted out first, and she like exaggerated it quite a bit. And I found out later on that wasn't necessarily true. So in my head, I was like, oh, she's a better player than we think. So I kept that in the back of my mind. But like I said, Carl sung her praises. So I went right up to her. I know that she's telling people that we didn't do the work, but I did the work with Kiri. And I put like full blown went up to her. I was like, I've been working with Carl. I would love to work with you. He has told me about like your relationship with him. And then she just proceeded to talk shit about Carl. And so in my head, I'm like, great, Carl, like Kiri is not with Carl. So I'm not going to keep putting more work in with Kiri. I didn't have the heart to tell Carl like all the shit she was talking. And so I was just like, I'm going to have to figure out how to work this out. So he would come up to us and be like, oh, she's with us. She's going to vote with us. And I like just knew like, and I mean, it wasn't like she was bashing him. I shouldn't say like shit talking, but she was definitely like not saying great things. So it was like, okay, like you don't say that about your number one. So those were my impressions of them right off the bat.
Let's talk a little bit about Shauna, because you were in Survival Challenge together, but you were never on a tribe until the merge with her in Reelfoot. She just got voted out from her Nankana 2.0 tribe. She seems like a person that you maybe want to say, don't stick with them. That's not good for your game. Come for us, because there are factions in my group, and we aren't going to stay together forever.
Yeah, so I did not want Shauna to be that vote. I did not. And I know people are saying that I did, but I did not want Shauna to be that vote. The names that were circulating was me, Tony, Shauna, and a few like Maddie P's, but I knew it wasn't going to be Maddie P. And German. And so I shut the German down thing quick and to Tony. And that's where we had like our small disagreement. He was like crying and he was like, you told me it was going to be German. I was like, we can't vote German on this first round. First of all, we need numbers. And if we don't have Hannah and German, we don't have numbers. So we can't vote German. It has to be a pink first. Like it has to be. And so he just like didn't realize the work I had put in to get us to that point at that point of the conversation. So I was never voting German. I wanted it to be Sandra, but I couldn't get that ball rolling. The connections with the Outlast people, nobody was voting Sandra. And I knew Shauna wasn't going to vote Sandra. And I knew Maddie P wasn't going to vote Sandra because he had already just told me that he was closest with Shauna and Sandra when
Mhm.
he was on the Musty Misfits with us. So I knew that wasn't going to work. So names were circulating, nothing was sticking. And right before Tribal, it was me and Ethan, and I was like, we just got to throw votes on Shauna. Like, we just got to throw votes on Shauna. And he was like, I agree. He was like, I'm tired of this. I don't know where we're going with it. And we'll just vote for Shauna. And then so between the two of us, we just got our little group, whoever did vote for her, group together. We knew they were voting for Tony because we could see them saying his name and whispering it to each other. So we knew Tony was going to cut votes. He had an idol. So I was like, yeah, just play it. He said he was going to play it. I was like, yeah, I think you should. And then going into that Tribal, though, I was going to throw a vote on Sandra. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't know if Battleback comes back with something. Then I knew she was going to go to the Outpost. I told Shauna I didn't want to vote her, and I was serious. But in our conversation, I could tell she was like not closed off to me completely, but definitely not hearing me. So I thought if I could get a couple votes going after her, and if she stayed in, that I could show her that I wasn't gunning for her. But I never.
Fun hypothetical. Let's say Shauna does use her stage without power. She leaves Tribal Council. Where does Reliance put their votes on instead?
To be honest, they might have all just went with German. They might have. I was still voting Sandra. Like, I was always voting Sandra. So they might have voted German. You'll have to ask them. I think that they might have voted German, and then a lot of votes would have went on Tony, and then both idols, I think, would have been played.
Were you expecting, and then Sandra goes home and you're like, hey, it worked. Were you expecting to be in the, were you thinking like, hey, I think, sorry, let me rephrase this. Who were you expecting to vote with you at Tribal Council?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect all those people to vote for Tony.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know what Hannah and German and Charlie were going to do. I really couldn't tell you that they were certainly with us. I mean, they did just vote, or I think it was them that just voted out Shauna. So I just didn't know. I was, shocked, but not shocked after the vote. And I mean, I went right up to Hannah and German and just told them both, like, I don't remember how I worded it, but it was basically like, good job, and my door's still open. My door did not close yet for them, and I made that clear.
In your ideal world, with perfect knowledge that you know now, what should have been the merge vote for you?
I mean, at this point, anyone that was on pink, I think I would have been good with. We needed to whittle that back down to at least get a little bit of like headway. And I was trying to explain that to like Charlie, German, and Hannah too. And I totally understand where their heads were at too. But I was like, we have to whittle down a couple pinks, and then whatever you want to do from there.
Well, clearly things go in a different direction. Well, a pink does go home next vote, just not the right one.
Yeah, but Carl was always a green, okay? I on that hill. Carl was always going to be, he's got a green heart. That's what his heart is green. I know he had fun on the pink, but he's got a green heart.
So how does it end up being Carl German? So you're walking out this Tribal Council, you just vote the minority, you go to Hannah and German, say, hey, the door's still open, we can still figure things out. How does the strategy of the next round then play?
So for the Carl vote, they iced us out. They did not speak to us. They wouldn't come in contact with us. I had already had my conversation at this point with Maddie. And our conversation really was not strategic. I think that was one of the realest conversations I had the whole game. And it was very much, I was just like listening to him and encouraging him. And I got a little bit of insight of where his head was at. And he did really execute where his brain was at, even from that point on. So I was impressed with that. And I felt enough that I wasn't going to be like the first vote. And I was holding on to hope that maybe him or Hannah, or I could convince Kiri. I was trying so hard with Kiri. Like, I liked Kiri, and I really felt like she knew what she was doing, and I love playing games with people like that. So I was still holding on to hope that somebody would eventually try to utilize me. Um, you know, I didn't know who they were going for, because when I tell you they iced us out, they iced us out.
So why German?
Oh, at this point, we were trying to stay consistent. So it was just like, you know, for me, I'm like, I'm staying consistent. I don't even think we cared, because we knew we didn't have the numbers. And we thought we could convince Maddie to flip on German because of the Outlast Alliance. And we were just like holding on to hope that somebody would see that 3 people from Outlast were in the final 6, and we could like shake it up a little.
Did German taking that idol that he and Kiri found factor in at all to targeting German there?
No, I would loved that he did it, because it like just created more chaos. I was like, great, please keep doing more things like that. 1, it was entertaining, and 2, it only helped us, you know, in my opinion. It did not factor at all.
Because it is one of my favorites. Small stories this season. The sheer number of votes German receives before actually being voted out is wild to me.
Yeah, when we get closer to the end of this podcast, I'll tell you what my whole plan was. But yeah,
so Carl goes out. It is a 6-5 vote.
Sad day.
Leaving your alliance now just all original Okina of you, Tony, Ethan, and Trinica, and from there it's like it's interesting to look at this line and say it's really kind of 2 duos operating. Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah, I guess so, because I worked in 3s a lot during this game, and I knew that Ethan and Trinica were tight. At this point in the game, though, we were all united as a 4, so I knew they were obviously going to stand up for each other regardless. And I was not gonna like back down from letting Tony go. I truly thought that we were gonna go somewhere with Charlie, because I knew that Charlie was really close with Tony and also with me at that, well, sort of, from my perspective. And I just felt like at some point it was either going to be like, so the next vote was going to determine if it was like me and Tony the last 2, or Trinica and Ethan as the last 2. I don't think we were really like 2 duos at that point in the game. I was just like, I'm a free agent. Anyone that wants to snatch me up, take me. I wouldn't have had fun with them like I did with the other ones, but I was like, at that point, I think we all were open to whatever anybody wanted to do.
So we have to talk about the next challenge, because you win it. This is the Tell Me a Story challenge. Talk to me about this challenge.
Yeah, I truly thought that was like, if I didn't win that, I was going. Like, I really did. I didn't listen to not one word Amos said when he was reading that story.
The secret strategy.
It was funny, because when he started, I was like, all right, Melissa, you got to focus. Like, you have got to focus. You have to focus. And we were gassed at this point. It was like over 90 degrees that day. We were in the hot sun, like for most of the day. We were tired. So I listened to as much as I could. 2 full pages he read to us. And then my strategy was, wherever everybody was going, I was going to go in the opposite direction. I didn't want them to see what box I went to. I didn't want them to see which one I picked. I didn't want them to know what I was doing. And I run straight to Penny. Penny was like the closest to me. So I run straight to Penny. It was actually the shortest distance. I was kind of hoping to do that one last, but I was like, you know what? No one's going to it. So I went right to Penny. I read the question, and I'm like, I'm just going to go with whatever. I like picked an answer. It was the right answer. So I run back. I'm like, that was it. That's all I needed, was to go off and get one answer on my own. So I put my coin down. And then at that point, I think I went to 2 stations that Tony was leaving, and he told me which one the coin was in. And then the other ones, they literally, I don't know what they were thinking, but they were standing around these boxes and like I could see which ones they were pulling the coin out of. So by the time I was approaching, I like didn't even read the question. I just would grab the coin out. And so at one point it was Maddie P has 4 coins. Melissa has 4 coins. I go and got my 5th coin and look to see where Maddie's at. And he's still at a box. And I was like, I have to haul ass to get over to this table. Like I have got to haul ass. And I'm a runner, and the first American woman that won the New York City Marathon runs over the finish line and she says, fuck yeah. So when I got over to that table and threw that like 5th coin down, it's like all I could think of was like, yes, like I just did that. Like, and I was like, I knew, like, I was like, none of them are going to congratulate me. No one's going to be excited. But I was just like so proud of myself in that moment because I knew I bought myself like just like one more tribal council. I was hoping it was the last one for that night so I could sleep there one more night, but it wasn't.
So now that you're immune, that gives you a little bit more wiggle room, right? Because your name's not be coming around, and so talking about the strategies, this is going to be a very interesting vote with kind of this split between Tony and Ethan that's going to go down. But what were you trying to accomplish, and who were you talking to?
Yeah, so if I were aggressive, this was the round that I was aggressive for because I feel like now's a good time to insert this like little backstory. Is I don't think like I can separate game and real life. Like I totally can. I can walk away from a messy, ugly game and still like be friends with people. I can do that. But I don't necessarily think that I needed to be the punching bag that I was throughout this portion of the game. So the snarky comments that you see me make and the little like sarcasm that I was like pushing was because of the way I was being treated up until this point. And so at this point, I was trying to make some moves. I had a really good conversation with Charlie. He was talking to me like a human. Finally. And I was like, wow, this is like going somewhere. He's trying to tell me what he wanted to happen. And then I went and did what he told me to do. Like I went and talked to Ethan. He wanted Ethan to approach him. I went and talked to Trinica. He wanted Trinica to approach him. Then Kiri calls me over to the, or I had said to Kiri, I really want to talk to you. And then she's like, give me a minute. And then she goes over to the poop graveyard and pulls me in, and we have a really productive conversation. I'm not backing her into a corner. I'm not threatening her. I am in no position of power. Like I haven't been for the last like 3 rounds. And I have a good conversation with her. She's game to hearing this. She threw out a couple of options. I told her what Charlie had said to me. She said, okay, get Charlie to come talk to me. We had a really short scramble time at this point. I wish we had just a little bit more because I felt like I was finally making some headway. And then after that point, I find that like, oh, Melissa's this big bitch. She was like talking down to us. She was like strong arming us. And like, that was not my perspective of the game at all. And I wanted to just like clear that up, that like, I don't think that I necessarily needed to be that punching bag to them. I was already down on the ground. Like you didn't need to keep kicking me. And like, why? Because you were threatened by me. I just didn't think it was like necessary because it continued after I like left the game as well. So at that point, like, you know, I was trying to make some moves, but I couldn't be as aggressive as I wanted to be. I was pushing a little more because I knew I was immune, but the conversations were being had. Like I didn't create Charlie wanting to talk to me. You know, I didn't create Kiri agreeing to have a conversation with me finally, you know, like those things happened organically. So it was interesting because right before then, you know, like I said, Charlie was very believing and I was like begging him. I was like, please just let it be Tony. Like, just leave me Tony. Like, please leave me Tony. And he was like, I will let you know. He was like, he said to me something along the lines like, if it's Tony, I'm getting fucked over at this point. And I was like, okay. So I believed him. And I think he had a similar conversation with Tony. And I think Tony believed him too, which is why I think Tony got so explosive at that tribal council because according to Charlie, he was going to keep Tony and try to go for Ethan.
And Charlie does vote for Ethan. So that is true. But
so, Yeah, so like that was, yes, I was trying to make moves, and people were actually Kiri and Charlie were actually having conversations with me, and it was great. I felt like, okay, like we're playing, like I'm still being like I'm playing with these people, but you know, it didn't really.
But Hannah, German, not much there.
Yeah, no, I mean, at this point, Hannah and I had a pretty significant conversation. What I didn't like that she kept doing was she would come up to me with this like super sweet voice that was almost like fake. And like she knew we were down, she knew nothing was going to happen, and she would just come and be like, okay, well, you know. And I finally looked at her and I was like, Hannah, I have talking to you this whole time, good, bad, and ugly, with a real tone of voice. I've been nothing but real with you from point A to point B. Can you please stop talking to me like that? Because it's super condescending. She walked away, and then all of a sudden the group of six is like, they're so condescending. I'm like, okay. I like everything that we would say, they would like flip it back on us. So with Hannah, I felt like we were at a dead end. And she would come up to me every so often to like try to like have like clarity or like clear the air so that we would be okay outside of the game. I don't know if that was like her jury management or what. But she would have that. German, I felt like I went up to him one time, like the night I was getting voted out. I was like, I really don't want to go. And I don't know what other pitch to say, but like, just please don't vote me out. And like, he obviously didn't say anything back. So I just kind of like walked away. But like, you know, those were the kind of conversations I got to have with Hannah and German. Like I said, Sandra just shut us down. The only people that like would kind of entertain us was like Charlie and Kiri. Or me, I should say.
So how surprised were you by this vote then, the 4-2-2? 4 votes Tony, 2 votes Ethan, 2 votes German.
I mean, I don't think surprised is like the right word for it. Like, of course I didn't want it to be Tony. And I begged Charlie to try to make it not Tony. I was just sad. My like homie was leaving. I don't know. It made me hate them for like a few seconds. I was like, ugh! And then I was like, all right, well, now I'm going to avenge my friend because like, you know, like I'm going to try to do the best I can.
So you have one last round this day. You have the Towel Smash Challenge. Kiri wins immunity. It's you, Trinica, and Ethan. And at this point, you'll probably say, hey, I'll vote either of the two out. So what are you doing?
We're laughing. We're doing a 3-way confessional. We are cutting up wood for their fire. We are while like blowing on the fire, like while they're like, hey, let's go have a chat like around us. So like the three of us were like helping the fire get going. And it was comical at this point. I had made it clear that I really didn't want to go. And Ethan was like, just vote me out. And so I had a feeling it was going to be me, but I was like kind of holding on to like maybe because he's like saying just vote me out, that they'll actually just vote him out. But there was we were eating a rattlesnake. We were laughing. We were coming up with our grocery order. If we got to go to Walmart and pick out some food, we were like truly enjoying each other's company because we knew one of us was getting cut that night. I knew I was starting to reach my peak because when we were at my health peak, because when we were at the challenge throwing the tile smash, I looked up at the moon and I saw 3 moons. And I was like, this isn't looking good for me. But I really wanted to be like, I genuinely wanted to stay. I wanted to at least stay one more night. And I do think that they made the right decision getting me out at that point because the next couple of challenges, I think I feel pretty confident in. But I kind of knew it was my time. So I wasn't scrambling. I had made my little, like, please don't vote me out pitch. But we were definitely like laughing and still having fun.
Well, it's a 3-3-1-1 vote, tie on you and Ethan, and it is a unanimous vote for you on the revotes.
And I played my shot in the dark.
And you play your shot in the dark, which was the right call.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. I got to play my shot in the dark without any hesitation, like at all, because they were like, well, I don't have a vote. It doesn't matter. Like, I would have just voted for German again. So he would have had, what, 18 votes at the end.
Which would have tied him for first. Oh, really?
So, I mean, it was cool. I got to check off another bucket list, play my shot in the dark, you know? But yeah, no, even at that tribal, it was dark. It was late. And I was like passing out like a little bit while we were sitting there. Like, I knew I was like starting to hit like a limit of where I was at, like fatigue and, you know, running around in the heat and totally putting myself at like top exertion. Like, I pushed myself as hard as I could. And I was sad, but we were laughing. We were planting that fake idol all over the place. We were like, I was finding tokens everywhere. I didn't even get to tell you that. At our green at Okina, I think now I'm learning that they were probably Danny's and maybe one of them was Ethan's, but nobody was complaining that they were missing tokens. I found 3 tokens in the
You're just finding other people's tokens and pocketing them?
Yeah,
Is that what you're doing?
I did. And one night I was so cold. I was like, well, I was cold every night, but there was one night I was shivering and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get a flashlight and go look for wood because I needed to move and I needed to get the fire like going. And I go and I turn the flashlight on and I'm not even exaggerating. The spot I turn the flashlight on, there's a token just sitting there. And I'm like, did production just throw this here? Is someone like literally sprinkling their tokens around the Okina camp? So I just kept taking them and nobody kept saying, no one said anything. So I was like, okay, well, I have my secret stash of tokens in this pocket and then the ones that people know about in this pocket.
You're now on the jury.
Yes.
What are you looking for in a winner?
Well, let me first tell you that I left that camp that night, and I was not allowed to sleep there. But however, I took a lot of supplies with me. I took.
You did what? So you and Blake.
Yeah. So we're like truly, we have the same heart. So I took. I didn't mean to take 6, but I took 6 flashlights. They had replenished our bug spray like right before we went to tribal. I took the entire can of bug spray. So they had no bug spray the whole night and whole morning. And so when I got back to the jury room, the first thing I did was like unpack my backpack and it was like flashlight. And every flashlight I would put down, Shauna was like bitter. But it was like one of those things. Oh, and then wait, hold on. Before we went to tribal, Trinica had put the binders. So there was we knew there was going to be a challenge where these binders came in play. And in those binders, there was a ton of information. And Trinica put the binders under her sweatshirt. And when when they were talking about who they were going to vote out, me or Ethan, and we were like tending the fire, I kept inching closer to the fire with the sweatshirt because I was going to throw the binders in the fire. I was going to throw the paper, and then like once all the paper burned up, I was going to then throw the binder itself into the fire because then I knew like that challenge hadn't happened yet. So they knew enough about wildlife and what to look out for. At this point, I was like, I'm just going to I'm burning it down. Like I'm going to burn it down. So I'm moving closer to the fire, and of course, like Sandra's like looking for the binders. Like no one was ever looking for these binders. So she's looking for the binder because she wants to fan the fire. And she comes over and puts her hand on the log and one of the binders slips out underneath the hoodie. And she goes, oh, and then like picks it up and comes over and like moves it. And I was like, there goes like my villain moment. Like they keep trying to villainize me. I'm like, let me give them a reason to villainize me. Because I felt like I played, like I know they wanted to say I was a villain, but I felt like I had heroic moves. Like I was fiercely loyal to my group. Like I stuck by them. I was like with them as much as I could, and I was like gonna die on my sword for them. So I was like, all right, if they're gonna keep calling me like this, that, and the other, I'm gonna throw their binders in the fire. But she stole that moment from me.
So getting back to the question then, right. So as a juror, what do you look for in a winner?
Okay, so I love to hear people's pitches at the end because I think that can really change your opinion. I was really hoping at this point, let's just fast forward to I know who the final 3 are. I was really hoping to to get like my socks blown off by Sandra, because the only person that was like singing her praises was Shauna, and I value Shauna's opinion. I didn't see it, so I wanted to see what Shauna saw in Sandra. For me, I was I don't know if you want to call this bitter. I don't know. I don't think it's bitter, but their jury management was like piss poor, in my opinion. We kept telling them, you know, like, you're putting all of us on the jury. And then what I didn't understand is why they would put all of us on the jury and leave Maddie in the game. Like, of all the people, like, of course we're like gonna vote for Maddie, or like, I mean, you know, obviously I wanted to hear what everybody's pitches were, but like, it was just crazy to me. And then, you know, like Sandra, she kept saying like, I'm loyal. I'm like, well, you know what? There is, how many jurors were there? 10, 9? How many? 9. 9. There's 9 people sitting on these benches that were loyal to somebody. So that like didn't impress me at all. And then like Shauna kept saying that she like conjured up like a bunch of votes. So guess what? There's 9 people sitting on these benches that conjured up a vote at some point. So it was like, I was waiting to hear from her like a little bit more. Like, if she doesn't, like, you know, we obviously, the Musty Misfits loved a spicy game. If they weren't spicy, that's fine. I just needed to hear like something. Like, I wanted to know why Charlie's like flip-flopping. Like, what was, like, I wanted to hear more of that. I wanted to hear him own more of that.
So I have a stupid question about Charlie's flip-flopping, because I'm not going to probably talk to Charlie for a while. I know he has the big flip at the Melanie German vote. Was it flip-flopping is that he was someone who you were able to talk to, and you felt like, okay, he's with me, but then he wasn't? Kind of, is that what you're kind of indicating?
It was messy, and I like and I saw that for like, he was messy the whole time, and I knew he was messy, but I still like that didn't affect me at all. But I'm very eager to hear his podcast, because I would love to hear a little bit more about why he made some of the decisions that he made, and how he got to making those decisions, because I still don't understand them. And I was even at a final tribal council with his pitch and final pitch and answered questions, and I still don't understand it.
So your question, you basically, personal growth and reflection is important. What's a mistake that you regret, and what would you do differently? How did you feel like the players answered your question?
I feel like they answered it well enough. You know, like I said, I wanted to hear more or less them owning some things in the game that they did like strongly, whether it was like good, bad, or the ugly. I'm impressed by stuff like that. I'm impressed that when people can take ownership of things that they've done, not just good things, but bad things too. Like, you know, like if they said something that was like they royally screwed up, and what they learned from that, that's impressive to me. I love personal growth. I love self-growth. I've had a couple of the biggest transformative years the last few years of my life. So that's like super impressive to me, game-wise, life-wise. Like I was waiting to hear something like that from them. I felt like their answers were okay. I honestly don't even remember them at this point. So they weren't that impactful if I don't remember them. But I think that they answered it, you know, like, okay enough.
Was there anything that Maddie said exactly that really helped, since really helped get you to be the one to vote for him?
I saw a lot of Maddie's game. I saw a lot of the way he thought through things. And when we had our big talk, he said he wanted to take Charlie to the end because he thought he could beat him. So if he's saying that second vote post merge and then gets all the way to the end with Charlie and did exactly what he said he was going to do, I didn't really need to hear a whole lot else like about like why he did what he did with those people, because I knew what he was doing. I saw it, I heard it, I saw him like execute what he said he was going to do. So I think his answers were really great, and I think that they just like put more icing on the cake that he already iced for me. So
is there anything else about the game or your time in the game that you want to talk about that maybe we missed?
I just think like, okay, so I think it was Sandra in our group chat called me a challenge beast, which was probably the best compliment I think anyone could ever give me, because I am not, like, I did not think that I was, or I didn't think that I could enter into a game with this caliber of people and be considered that. I was like, oh, well, thank you. Like, but I really want to attribute that to Tony, because there were a few challenges, like especially in the beginning, that I was like, I can't do this. I'm not gonna be able to do this. And he like looked me in my eyes and was like, you can do this and you're gonna do it. And he was like so good for me. Like he was like the tough love I needed. And he was like, you're gonna do it. So he gave me that initial confidence in myself. And then it just kind of like trickled throughout the game. Because I don't think I would have had it if I didn't have someone like him like in my corner.
How is the post game for you?
It's good. Like I said, I can separate game and real life. So I feel a connection with these people. There's like, you know, the only person I have never met and never talked to was James. Otherwise, I've had a conversation with just about everyone post game. And I feel like truly this was a great experience. And even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, I checked a lot of the boxes that I had set for myself going into this game. So I was pleased with the game I played. I was really proud of myself. And so leaving that, being proud of myself, I really wasn't holding grudges against anybody. So I was able to like enter into the group just with like open arms. And whether it's reciprocated, I don't know, but that's how I feel about it.
Would you like me to throw some kind of last questions your way? Some rapid fire questions?
Yes, let's do it.
So who surprised you the most?
Charlie and maybe Kiri. Like I said, I think I had some feelers out there for her early on, but like Charlie and Kiri.
Who do you wish you had a chance to work with but didn't?
Okay, so this is where I didn't get to finish German, because I was hoping that everybody on that 6 thought I hated German or we hated German so much that they would take into the end. And I was 100% voting him to win. I wanted to go and be like, I stayed consistent this whole game, and I'm going to continue to vote for German. And that was like my goal. And I even told him in the game, like, I hope you know that I genuinely do not hate you. And then even after the game. So I think that I wish that me and him could have had a conversation without Hannah. Not without Hannah in the game, just a conversation, me and him, because I truly think that we would have been like tight. So he's one that I really, really wish I got to actually work with. And then Jordan, I know I did get to for like a hot second, but I just, I adore her and wish that I got to work with her.
Let's say Reelfoot's going to have a returning season. What's one player from your season, not yourself, that you'd like to see come play?
Even though I won that superlative.
What superlatives did you win at the end?
I won most likely to return and fan favorite.
Gotcha. So yes, you had to give the crown to someone else for this one.
Yes. So, you know, I'm going to stay with my boys, and I'm going to say Tony and Carl and Trinica. Honestly, she's the phoenix on Ethan's back. Like she is that rising. Like I just watched her just like, oh, I love her. I love her. So I can't pick one of those 3.
What was your favorite challenge?
All the endurance ones. I loved them. I've only played one other LRG, and we didn't get the opportunity to play those kinds of challenges because it was like so quick. So we just didn't have time to like spend on endurance challenges. But like when Trinica and I held that box up with our foot with the weights in it, that was like, oh, it was so cool. Holding the pole, the bars with the pole in the middle was really cool. I mean, I could stand on one leg for as long as they wanted me to. Like the nighttime one, because I was just trying to reconcile with Hannah. I told her I would leave when she would have left. Otherwise, I would have been out there with Shauna and Ethan until like the sun came up. I hated that merge camp. I entered it dark. I didn't know where I was. I didn't have my like bearings. I didn't know where I would sleep. I felt super uncomfortable with all the different dynamics that were going on. So I would have loved to stand in a field all night long. I had like a perfect spot. They put me in the back of the house right in front of the window so I could see everyone inside. It was like I was watching TV, and I just like braided and unbraided my hair the whole time I was out there. I don't even remember what you asked me, but that's like the endurance ones. Like those are the ones that I loved. Those were the ones I loved.
Survival challenge, endurance challenges, they just make it really difficult because they're like, we're going to expedite this and you're going to suffer fast. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it was very quick. Yeah.
What was a favorite camp life moment that maybe we haven't talked about?
Yeah, just, the musty misfits, finding my idol, sitting at that, like I loved sitting at that little living room. I don't know, like the green, I know it sounds like cheesy, but I loved that little green tribe. Like I think it was just fun. Joe was so cool too. She taught us so much about like survival, and I loved watching her collect her little flowers and all the things that she would like collect either legally or illegally, like duct tape. But I just enjoyed that. But the musty misfits were, I'm telling you, you got to watch that footage. We were friends. We were true friends. I really felt that.
If you can go back in time and tell yourself one thing before the season began, what would you tell yourself?
Don't trust Hannah. And maybe not, like, I personally just didn't see myself as this big player. So I didn't know what I was capable of. So the fact that all these people said this about me, I'm going to take that into consideration. I think that I could have started a little slower, maybe. I just, maybe start a little slower.
What's a piece of advice you'd give other people who played Survival Challenge first and Reelfoot second?
You're in it for the long haul. It is a little bit more difficult physically, because it's just longer. And it's just a different experience. It's a totally different experience. I do think they both were pretty authentic in their own ways. But because we got to do challenges for longer periods of time and have longer periods at camp life, it felt a little bit more authentic to the TV show.
So what has this experience meant for you?
Like I said, I'm not a camper. I don't even now, the 2 times I've done it, I still don't think I would camp for fun. Like there's nothing about that sounds like fun to me. But I love being hard pressed. I love pushing myself outside my limits. I love meeting new people and going to new locations that I've never been to, and just experiencing things that are different. And like I said, put us outside of our comfort zone. So for me, it's to show my kids that I'm not just mommy, that I still chase my dreams and do things that I enjoy, and put myself out there, and I want them to do the same thing. So that's really all. When my kids were not babies anymore is when I was like, what, I have to continue to pursue my dreams and my hobbies, because I need them to see that in their mom, instead of just like, oh, she's just mommy. And I'm also consider myself a really strong woman. I stand up for myself. I don't let people just talk about me behind my back. So I really wanted to I do this to be a good example for my kids too. So it means a lot to me, more than just playing the game of Survivor, which I do love. It means a lot more to me than that.
Would you play another game?
Yeah. Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Stop me if you don't want me to talk about it.
Yeah.
There's a charity game that you will be playing at some point in the future. Would you like to talk anything about that right now?
Not really.
Okay.
But
more in terms of pitching your charity. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, like I'm playing one of the biggest reasons why I didn't know if I was going to be able to play Reelfoot is because my sister-in-law was just diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. And it has like flipped our family on its back. And so I originally was going to be playing for a homeless nonprofit locally, because I have a really, really big heart for the homeless community, and just this this nonprofit like provides so much resources for them. And so that was really what I was initially going to play for.
Mhm.
And then when all this happened with my sister-in-law, I just could not see myself raising money for anything else other than bringing awareness
Mhm.
to just this rare form of cancer and in general. And so that's what I'm going to be playing for. And I'm really excited because I think it's going to just be a totally different game.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's pretty much all.
Yeah. And if you're interested and would like to donate for this cause, please reach out to Melissa and she can
Yeah,
tell you
just
the next steps for that.
yeah, please.
Well, Melissa, I think that's all I have. I was supposed to say thank you so much for staying up late to do this with me. I know your kids are in bed, and you probably have an early day tomorrow. So I'm really grateful that we just got the 2.5 hour mark. So I apologize for not keeping it closer to 2 hours.
No, and I just, before I go, I just want to like do a quick shout out. I really loved my time out at Reelfoot. So I don't think it would have been as memorable if we didn't have the production members that we had. I truly felt cared for. I felt heard. I felt taken care of. There was a couple things that I needed extra throughout the week, with like my female cycle and certain things. And I think it was a little outside of their comfort zone for them, but they were willing to work with us. And I just want to just tell you that I really enjoyed my time. I did feel very well taken care of. I thank you for taking the time to do this with all of us. It's kind of like the therapy that I don't think we that we all kind of need. So it's kind of fun to just like dive in and talk about the different things that we did while we were out there and the conversations we got to have. So I thank you for taking your time because it's a lot of commitment that I don't think I would do.
Well, I may question my sanity every summer, but it's been a lot of fun digging into all the stories.
Yeah. So thank you, and thank you to the production of Reelfoot. I hope that they at least listen to the last 5 minutes so they can hear me say that.
Well, thank you again, Melissa. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This has been another Surviving Reelfoot deep dive. There is more to come. I'm booking, I think I'll be talking to Trinica next Monday evening, and hopefully we'll start working our way through the Breakfast Club because Ethan's in Australia, so therefore his time's going to be a little bit later down the road.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Well, good. I'm glad you get to meet my besties.
Excellent. Well, take care, Melissa, and everyone who's listening, have a grosser night.